We're going to take up agenda item number 3, presentation on the proposed Road-Solstice 765 kV transmission line. We have Kurt Rasmussen with us here this morning that's going to do the presentation on this. And we had asked as a court if they could just come and give an opportunity for local people to hear the information they have to share on this line. And then also where our papers and stuff would pick up the information as well. So we're going to let him do the presentation, and then after the presentation, anybody that has you will need to fill those out if you want to have any comments, but you're welcome just to bring those up when you come up and hand them to me would be fine. And it is a 3-minute limit on the response time, but with that said, we'll go ahead and get started. So Kirk, if you'd like to come forward.
Good morning, Judge, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you a little bit this morning. I represent CPS Energy, and I know there's been a lot of public interest in a power project that CPS Energy and AEP Texas are proposing. And I've got a presentation to kind of walk through some of the background and what the project is, and perhaps a little of what it is not as well. And then I've got several folks from CPS, AEP, and one of our consultants, power engineers, with me. So if I look over my shoulder for help, if I look over my shoulder to the right, I'm looking to the pastor for help. If I look to the left, I'm looking for help from my colleagues. So I may be going this way a little more. Okay, so as I said, I represent CPS Energy, and I'm here to talk about the Road-Solstice 765 kV transmission line project. Okay, so as an overview, in 2023, the Texas legislature passed a bill that required the Public Utility Commission of Texas to develop a reliability plan for the Permian Basin region. So,
Oops.
Oh, man. Okay, so in addition to, and so I've got the Permian Basin region up there on the map. So in addition to what we would refer to as local projects, on April 24, 2025 of this year, the Public Utility Commission approved the development of 3 765 kilovolt import path corridors. So as you can see on that map, one of those paths is from kind of south of Fort Worth out to south of New Mexico. And then the central path is from kind of north of Austin to the center of the Permian region. And then this project, the Road-Solstice project, starts just southwest of San Antonio and goes about just outside of Fort Stockton. And so CPS Energy owns and operates the Howard Station, and AEP Texas owns the Solstice Station. So under the ERCOT rules, they're developing the project 50-50. Okay, so prior to this project, the largest transmission lines in Texas were primarily 345 kilovolts. So most of the large lines that you may have seen, perhaps driving down I-10, the line that is along I-10 is a 345 kilovolt transmission line. There's a couple of limited 500 kV lines in East Texas, and there's one currently under development, but there are no currently existing 765 kV lines. So these approved projects will be the largest transmission lines in the state of Texas. Okay, so these lines will be built, they'll be single circuit lines, meaning there's 3 sets of wires. They'll be on lattice steel towers of varying heights based on terrain. And the lines will be built within a right-of-way of approximately 200 feet. So for comparison, and I'm not an electrical engineer, but I work enough with them that they trust me to say a little bit. If we were to get the same capacity for a 765 line, that would take 3 double circuit 345 kilovolt lines. So if you look at the kind of the largest lines you see, if we if we needed the same capacity of these approved lines, it would take 3 of those 345 kV lines side by side. So, about 200 feet of right of way for the 765 kV line versus it would be, 400 to 500 feet of right of way with 3 large towers to get the same level of capacity as what's been approved here. Okay, so the import path that impacts this community, as I said, it's been jointly developed by CPS Energy and AEP Texas. The length of the project will be approximately 370 miles long, and CPS Energy will own and operate the eastern half of the project. So if a portion of this project goes through Medina County, it would be the CPS Energy half of the project. And what happens is once the line gets approved, the utilities will determine the midpoint and then they'll basically meet in the middle. Okay, so once the Utility Commission assigned CPS Energy and AEP Texas to develop this project, they engaged a consultant, Power Engineers, to perform a routing study and an environmental assessment. Power Engineers has done hundreds of these types of projects in the state of Texas. And what they do is with some input from federal state agencies, aerial photography, what they can see from public rights-of-way, they initially develop a study area. So you can see there that big black box is kind of the area that they initially looked at. And they identify preliminary segments for the project. Okay, so this is what Power Engineers initially came up with. And these are our preliminary segments, and as you can see, that covers a pretty wide geographic area. And so in order to be able to evaluate potential routes for the project, they come up with a wide geographic area so they can compare and contrast better or less good locations for the project. Okay, and these preliminary segments were then presented to the public at 4 open house meetings. One was in Atascosa on August 4th, Uvalde on August 5th, Del Rio on August 6th, and Fort Stockton on August 7th. And I put the URL where that open house information is, but if you just put CPS Energy and Road-Solstice, you'll get directed to this website. So all of the information that was presented to the public at those open house meetings is available on that website. AEP Texas also has a similar website that has a lot of information about the project also. And so notice was sent to everyone that owned property within 500 feet of one of those preliminary segments, and they were invited to attend one of these open houses. We requested that the public provide us with input by September 3rd about anything that we may not be aware of regarding their areas, their property, potential impacts of the project. And I realize September 3rd has passed, but if anyone still wants to provide us input, we will definitely still take that. Anything, we try to gather information about private property via publicly available sources, but a lot of times the landowners know a lot more about their property, features on their property that we may not be aware of. So things like water wells, proposed development, conservation easements, environmental assessments or studies that may have been done on private property. We may or may not be aware of that through publicly available sources. So we invite the public to share with us anything that they feel like might be important in evaluating these preliminary segments. So even though that date has passed, if anyone has a desire to share that information with us, we will definitely still take it and consider it in our evaluation. We also will continue to reach out to federal, state, local agencies and officials. This meeting is part of that outreach to gather any information that the county may have about potential impacts of the project. And then we've received hundreds of comments from the public already that we are now starting to assess and evaluate. And the next question is, okay, what do we do with all that? Okay, so we are working towards an application. And by the way, I should have said this. Feel free to interrupt me at any time if you have questions. I'm happy for you to ask at the end, but if there's anything you want me to stop, feel free to interrupt me. So we're developing an application to the Utility Commission that we're currently anticipating filing in February. And so that application will include a detailed environmental assessment from Power Engineers about all of the potential impacts of the project. The commission requires us to answer 30-some questions about potential impacts of the project. And ultimately what we will do is we will file an application that has numerous geographically diverse routes. So that preliminary segment map, our final application will look something like that, where we will have numerous segments and numerous routes that cover wide geographic diverse corridors, so that the Utility Commission can evaluate the pros and cons of one routing option versus another. That can get frustrating to the public about why do we have to have so many options? Why do we have options that may be perceived as bad or less preferable than other options? The Commission wants us to show our data and show our work. So we evaluate all of the criteria that they require us to consider in preparing that application. So Power Engineers will study and calculate 40+ different criteria. We measure length across streams or water bodies, length across woodlands, length across agricultural properties, the degree to which it parallels roadways or parallels existing transmission lines, pipelines that we may cross or parallel, potential endangered species habitat, archaeological sites. And in our open house information, we listed all of the criteria that we will study and evaluate. So our application will provide a summary of all of that data, and we will present that to the commission. And again, people they ask us all the time, why do you have to have so many routes, even if one looks a whole lot worse than another route? If we don't show that data, then the argument is, well, maybe that one's better. So we have routes that we may not objectively feel are as good measurably as others, but the commission wants us to present them so they can see what the data looks like in comparing one route option against another. In an application of this length, we will probably have hundreds of different route combinations where we will measure the data and present that to the commission. Two of the factors that are highly considered, in addition to everything I just talked about, is the cost of the project.
That's his reminder he was supposed to bring the collection plate. He missed it.
I thought that was the line meter.
We'll go with the first one.
I think so too. So the commission, they want to know the cost. The cost of these projects is paid by all electric ratepayers in most of the state, and they want to know how many habitable structures are within 500 feet of a proposed route. So we measure a variety of criteria. Those are two that the commission pays particular attention to. Yes, sir.
Do y'all rank the routes most preferable during this application process, or is that just left up to the UC to decide?
That's a great question. So the application we submit requires us as utilities to identify the route that we think best meets the criteria, just one route. And we often get the question, does that, well, obviously the commission picks that, and the answer is they rarely do. And that's okay. And it's because we're looking at the objective criteria when we submit our application. The Utility Commission is looking at a much larger view of potential impacts to the community that we may not be able to measure just by objective data. So the Utility Commission considers a lot of factors in a broader sense than what we can just objectively measure. And so once we identify that route, we as utilities are pretty agnostic about what happens at that point. We don't have a preferred route. We don't advocate for a preferred route. we advocate for the data. We try to provide the best data that we can and support the data, not support a particular route. So why is that important? It's important because what the Utility Commission does consider is the input from the community. So when we file our application, and maybe let's just go to the next slide. We will send, again, notice of, well, let me back up on one point. So we presented those preliminary segments. Part of the process now, once we've gotten all this input, is we're going to make adjustments. We will remove some segments. We will potentially add segments where we can improve the routing. We're going to modify segments that are existing. So this public input process helps us to refine and improve these route segments. And it is not unusual, particularly of an application of a scope like this, where we will make a lot of changes to our preliminary segments based on the public input that we receive. The Department of Defense, I didn't mention them. We consult with them regularly about potential military impacts. Obviously, the Air Force Base, not too far away. We've spoken with them, and we'll have communication with them about their flight patterns and potential impacts. So once we get all of that input, we then refine these segments. So what we end up filing will not be the same preliminary segments. Some will be the same, but we do try to make a lot of changes to if we can improve it. And a lot of that's based on public input, again, input from federal, state, local agencies. We're looking for ways we can improve the route. So once we get to that final set of routes and route segments, we send notice to everyone who's crossed by one of those segments and everyone that has a habitable structure within 500 feet. We publish notice that we filed the application in a newspaper in every county in which a project will cross. And then we're going to send notice to county officials. We'll send notice to any municipality within 5 miles, other utilities, Texas Parks and Wildlife, Office of Public Utility Council, again to the Department of Defense Siting Clearinghouse, and then numerous other state and federal agencies, federal elected officials, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, Nature Conservancy, anybody that we think may have input or interest in the application getting filed, so they have an opportunity to participate, submit comments, or be a party to the case. Okay, so after the case is filed, it's a pretty important time for anybody who's interested. There's a 30-day window when an interested party can choose to participate in that process at the Utility Commission. So we refer to anybody who wants to be a party as an intervener in our application. And that's not a complex process. In fact, every notice that we send out has 2 forms with it. One's a comment form and one's an intervention form. And all it requires for landowners to do is put their name and address and sign it at the bottom saying, I want to be a party to the case. And they can be admitted to the as party to the case as long as they're within some degree in relation to the project. So if somebody in Dallas wants to intervene, we may ask them what their relation is to the project, but somebody that we can identify geographically is within proximity to one of our proposed routes, we won't object to them being a party to the case. And then the Utility Commission sends our application to another government agency called the State Office of Administrative Hearings, and they will assign a neutral judge to oversee the application proceeding. And then in that proceeding, there's about a 90-day window where it's a pretty intense litigation-like process where parties can send discovery to the utilities. So one question we get is, what is going to happen with all this data and all this information we're gathering? A lot of it will be in our application that we file with the Utility Commission, but anything in our files at that point is pretty much subject to being produced in discovery. So what people may want to know about what we know about this endangered species or this particular feature, if we have information in our files, that's available for anybody to see in the discovery process. And then ultimately that leads to intervening parties can file their own testimony. They can submit their views of what should happen. The Utility Commission staff will participate. Parks and Wildlife will probably participate as a party. And all of that will then get presented to this judge at a hearing. And any witness who has submitted pre-filed written testimony can then be cross-examined by any party. So the utilities will have a panel of expert witnesses that developed our application, developed our environmental assessment, and any party to the case can then ask them questions about why they did what they did or how they evaluated a certain fact or feature in the application. And then the administrative law judge, after that hearing, will take 60 days and write a written recommendation to the Utility Commission. And then that will be presented publicly. Here's the judge's recommendation about what the Utility Commission should do. And then the 5 appointed utility commissioners will consider that evaluation. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, there we go. So the Utility Commission will evaluate the judge's recommendation, and it's common that they allow interested parties to make a verbal comment to them, kind of as y'all have. Most parties tend to get 3 to 5 minutes to explain to the commission why they should or shouldn't pick a certain route or what they should do with the application. And then we anticipate that the commission will consider this application around September or October next year. And then ultimately those 5 appointed commissioners will take 2 actions. They will approve the project if they believe the utilities have submitted a complete application. And then if they approve the project, they will identify the route for the project to be constructed. So, one question we get a lot is, you already know where this is going to go, or you know your best route. I would tell you at this stage, we don't even have the data gathered to have an opinion about what the best route would be. And then even once we file our application and we identify the route that we think best meets the criteria, like I said, it is not uncommon. In fact, it is very much the rule that the commission tends to pick some other route than what the utilities identify if it's a contested case. And that's the way the process is designed to work, because the commission can consider the public input in a way, again, that we may not be able to evaluate just based on objective criteria. Okay, so once the commission approves the route, CPS Energy will begin contacting the landowners on the eastern half of the project to negotiate to obtain the 200 feet, approximately, a right-of-way for the project if they're crossed by the project. And then AEP Texas will construct the western half, and they'll work with those landowners to obtain the necessary right-of-way. As a utility in the state of Texas, both CPS Energy and AEP Texas have the power of condemnation. So if an agreement can't be reached with the landowners, a condemnation proceeding would be initiated to ultimately take the right-of-way for construction of the project. I think it's both utilities' hope that we can come up with an agreement with the landowners based on an appraised value of the property, but ultimately, when people ask, do we have the power of condemnation, both utilities do have that power to construct a project like this. Okay, so following the right-of-way acquisition, survey, and engineering, we anticipate construction beginning in 2028, and then the project's currently anticipated to be energized and in service by the end of 2030. And that's the end of what I prepared. I'm happy to answer questions. I know I went through that pretty quickly.
Excellent. So I'm going to go ahead and just open it up to public comments or questions if there's any that we have. We can do that. And I know a couple of people told me they weren't sure after the presentation if they would have comments or not, or if they may be satisfied with the presentation. So I'm just going to, I'll announce, and then you're welcome to ask your questions or come forward. And if you do not have one, then you're welcome to just let us know that as well. So I do have Amanda Griffin.
floor. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for allowing me this time. My face may be a little bit familiar to some of you. I was here a few meetings ago talking about the Hill Country Alliance resource for new subdivisions to adopt language in their rules to preserve our Hill Country character, such as best use of limited water resources, dark skies, and our unique geology, geography, and ecology that attracts so many people to our Hill Country region. And I wouldn't have known at that time that I'd be back so soon to discuss another threat to our globally recognized asset, which is the Texas Hill Country region. Most counties in the area that would be affected by these high transmission lines, high voltage transmission lines, rely heavily, if not exclusively, on tourism. I'm including summer river guests in tourism, as well as our year-round hunting. So not only would that industry be discouraged by the ruined vistas, it would in essence make the Texas Hill Country industrial corridor serving the Permian Basin, where once there were spectacular views and wildlife habitat and pristine rivers and riparian ecosystems. I'm also really concerned, and I think that you should be concerned about the loss of land values in areas in proximity to these high voltage power lines. One resource that I researched said 10 to 30% land value loss in areas depending on the proximity to the lines. So, you know, a few of your landowners in your county are going to get a one-time payment or maybe a term easement to host these high transmission lines, but all of his or her neighbors, all of our residents, all of our lodging owners that rely on these beautiful vistas to for their livelihood are going to have to look at these lines. They're going to have to drive under them. They're going to have to live in proximity to the electromagnetic fields that they put out. And all of this is to benefit the Permian Basin, no benefit to our community. I notice you've got a budget workshop at the end of this meeting. So think about that budget workshop here in 2028 at a 10 to 30% land value reduction. Our land values go down, our county taxes are going to go down. This is going to affect everybody from the bottom to the top in this county. So I just want to encourage you to think carefully about this and encourage you to definitely oppose running this through our Hill Country area. Thank you very much.
Stella Josephine?
My name is Stella Josephine. I'm here in the Hondo area. I have questions. So if I could just go through my questions and then they'll probably address them at some point in this. One of them is, if you go online, you look at the maps for the different sections, it'll show approximately where it is on individual properties. I'm wondering how much that would change. You did mention during this presentation that there could be some changes. So, for example, when I filled out my information, I included that area, but I didn't include other parts of the property. So that would be one of my questions on that. How much would it change from where it is identified currently? And then the maintenance, you know, years down the road, what kind of maintenance are done on these towers and how do they access that? Another one of my concerns, and I mentioned I was at the Bandera Commissioners County and I talked with the project manager afterwards, and I mentioned my thought about fire, my concern about fire and how that we addressed. You know, as people know here, we live in such a dry area, so our potential for fire is high, as well as most of us are far from a resource to put those fires out, so we'd be concerned with limited water to do so. So how fire will be prevented and addressed. And then the spacing on the towers, how far those, from what I read, it varies, so how far those towers are anticipated to be spaced. And then I'm also curious about where those towers are manufactured. And so the last comment I have really is, it's just one concern about health. you know, I know studies will identify, oh, it's, you know, it's safe and those kinds of things, but most of us know, you know, I'll put something on a little digital scale I use in my kitchen, and sometimes if my phone is too close, that scale will start doing funny things. So I think, gosh, if my little small scale is so affected by the impact of that, how much more are our bodies impacted by that kind of, you know, over 750,000 volts of energy going through those lines. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Ms. Griffin. I tell you what, let's just, while we're here, Kurt, do you mind just addressing, I think sheet had 5, the first was on the maps and how that route may change versus what's the, in other words, on the same property, could the route move?
Yeah. Thank you, Judge, Commissioners. So it's hard to say how much routes can change. It depends on what we see upstream, downstream. We're looking for opportunities to improve routes. We're looking for opportunities to avoid unknown features that we may not have known in the preliminary routing. We try to make changes that improve the route, and we try to be sensitive that if I improve the routing on, you know, one landowner, it may negatively impact the property next door. And so even if I knew a particular requested change or concern, until we can really get all of the comments together and kind of lay them side by side, we try to be careful that we're not assisting one landowner and negatively impacting another landowner. The answer is they can change in some instances quite a bit. If there's an opportunity to improve the routing, or if there's a significant risk or significant impact, a segment could be removed entirely, modified significantly. So it's difficult to say exactly how much a particular segment or routing might be modified, but we do in our application explain every change. So if we have modified a preliminary segment, our application will explain why we modified it, what the basis was, and why we believed it was an improvement for what we initially laid out in the preliminary segment. So I can't really give a particular answer, but you know, potentially quite a bit. So if there are landowners that felt like they hadn't provided information about other areas of their property, we would be happy to receive other information, more information on wider aspects of their property if they hadn't provided that to us yet. Maintenance. For these transmission lines, they tend to be pretty low maintenance. We design them so that we can access them primarily through our right-of-way. We install gates. We don't fence the right-of-way, but if a landowner has a fence, we pay to install a gate so that we can stay within our right-of-way to every extent possible, or we negotiate with a landowner access to our right-of-way across their property some other way, and that's compensated as well. But primarily, we try to access by monitoring it through the right-of-way. These days, there's a lot of technology advances where these transmission lines can be surveyed via drones, so that we don't have to even access landowners' private property. But for a line like this, they're pretty low maintenance, so there's not a lot of ongoing access to the landowner's property. We do contact the landowners in every extent if we can, if it's anything short of an emergency, to let them know that we're coming out to maybe do a survey of the towers, so they know in advance. But in an emergency situation, our right-of-way access will allow us to get to the line if there's a concern over health or safety. Fire prevention, all of these high voltage transmission lines have lightning protection and static wires on them to prevent fires via lightning. Most of the stories that we've seen recently in the state of Texas were due to distribution lines or poorly maintained transmission lines that have been in place for a long time. The Utility Commission has required all of the utilities in the state of Texas to make significant efforts to improve fire prevention. So for a line like this, again, these towers are going to be pretty tall. There will be static wires and lightning protection to avoid fires from this project. Spacing between the towers, that varies quite a bit based on the terrain, but approximately 1,600 feet or so, and that could be a little more or a little less depending on the terrain. So for an average property, that may be 2 or 3 to 4 towers per acre, or per mile, excuse me, as the line crosses the property. And that is something that we do work with landowners once we have an approved route to, if it's better to have it here rather than there to avoid a road or potential impact, there's definitely an opportunity. We work with landowners to some degree to be able to discuss where those towers are located. But it's usually 2 to 3 to 4 per mile based on kind of a 1,600 foot average space. I think the question, where is the power from? The answer in the state of Texas is it comes from everywhere. While these projects are intended to improve the reliability of the Permian Basin region, the Permian Basin region has a lot of solar and wind that in the daytime would probably be pushing this direction if there was a sufficient corridor for it to come. So the power in that area, again, primarily renewable, solar and wind, is probably going to push this direction during the daytime hours. And then during the nighttime, when the oil and gas load is going 24/7, we might see the power that's more traditional oil and gas, or gas, nuclear from the South Texas project pushing, the line this, to the west towards the Permian Basin region. So the mix in ERCOT is varied. One of the reasons for this project is so that the power can flow more smoothly without constraints on the transmission system. So we would anticipate that the renewable power out west could come this direction easier with this line, but also that more traditional fossil generation. But there's also a lot of renewable power that's being developed kind of south of San Antonio, solar, that we're seeing come online that might also contribute when it can.
I think her other question actually was on, she, I think specifically asked where the towers are manufactured. Is that correct? The actual towers where they're manufactured.
Oh, okay. I heard power, where's the power from? You were like, where's the tower, where's the steel from? That's going to vary from the utilities. There's, I know with CPS Energy and AEP Texas, they have several vendor contracts. There are laws in the state of Texas about where they can access steel for infrastructure. So, but those are vendor contracts in place with both utilities have multiple vendors, and it would be a competitive bidding process to acquire the steel for these towers.
Can I ask one real quick? How does the terrain and the topography of the hill country and the presumably difficulty in construction and access and maintenance affect y'all's decision?
It's definitely a factor. It's definitely a factor in how we try to lay out the routes. So we have topographic maps that we're evaluating and trying to avoid, our engineers are looking to see, okay, is that an area where we're comfortable going up and down? It's not just for construction, it's also for maintenance and access. So, all things being equal, we'd really like a straight, flat area. In West Texas, that's a lot easier than it is through this part of the country. So we take it into consideration in a couple of ways. We try to avoid significant terrain if we can, and that both from an engineering perspective as well as an aesthetic perspective. We know that the higher we are, the more visible the line will be. That's not always possible. And when we do have segments where there's more terrain, we try to account for that in our cost estimating. So the utility commission knows, okay, if you approve this route, there's going to be a higher cost with these structures based on how we have to access the terrain in construction and maintenance.
More questions? Anybody have any questions for? Excellent. If you could just state your name, it would be great. State your name, please, then you can ask the question.
It's Carol Purvis, And I couldn't hear everything you said, but I was wondering, the transmission lines that you were proposing, what was the main source of power that you're bringing through here? Is it the wind and solar, or is it the gas? I mean, it's a combination, and I was wondering, since the recent legislation phasing out a lot of the incentives and tax credits for wind and solar, does this impact this, and is this the reason you're accelerating the dates? And these addresses this, and also, is the project approved, or is that you're waiting to get approval for the route? I mean, there's a difference. And one major thing I want to know is, you mentioned a lot of studies that's being done. What about the health impact of these high transmission lines of 760 kilovolt? Has anybody done studies on the impact on that? And because you're bringing these lines through essentially some populated areas.
Okay, so the power in the state of Texas, the load, which means the consumption of electricity in the state, is expected to double by 2030. So if you look at where we're at now, the ERCOT market is roughly 85 gigawatts, the total capacity on a summer day. And currently, ERCOT projects that the total capacity of the ERCOT market by 2030 will be as high as 145 gigawatts. So the electric consumption in the state of Texas is projected to nearly double by the time this project gets constructed. So the answer on generation is it's all of it, and plus whatever can get built in the next 5 years. So there's a lot of natural gas generation in and around San Antonio. There's some existing coal-fired generation throughout the state. Most of that is due to environmental reasons, is getting phased back. There's a couple of large nuclear plants that have been around since the 90s, but then a lot of the rest is solar and wind, a little bit of hydro, and then whatever can get developed in the next 5 years. So the answer is, when we live in a market in Texas where it's financially incented generation, so to the extent that people can build power plants and make money, they will. And so the Utility Commission constructs transmission so that wherever that power gets built, it can flow wherever it needs to be used as seamlessly as possible. So I think the answer is we're seeing significant, as a utility industry, we are seeing significant generation interconnection requests throughout the system. So it's kind of everywhere is the answer, and depending on the time of day, as I speculated, now we'll see once the system where it is in 2030, but I would not be surprised if in a summer day or on a August 20th when schools are back in session in this part of the country, that the wind and solar in West Texas is going to be pushing this direction. But then during the nighttime when we've all turned off our air conditioners in our businesses and schools, that we'll see the power going to West Texas where the oil and gas development is. Again, that's, I'm kind of looking at a crystal ball, but these projects are going to allow the generation to flow more smoothly throughout the state.
Has the actual project been approved?
Yeah, so that's a tricky question. And so the commission approved these 765 projects, and they assigned CPS and AEP Texas to build this one. So they approved the project, but they withheld final approval, saying we want you to present us an application that we deem appropriate. So I guess we could say they kind of gave a soft approval. They approved us to develop the project and present it to them, but they're withholding final approval until they deem our application sufficient.
So our concerns are going to be, addressed about the project, and also the health concern about the transmission lines. I mean, has there been studies to show that the public is not exposed to,
Yeah.
what the transmission lines carry? I mean, you often hear about, the potential for cancer when you have concentrated power lines and power sources all, and with this being the largest in the state, it seems like it's being generated a lot more, and the risk would be a lot more for health implications.
So the answer to your health question, I appreciate you raising that. We do get that a lot. On the AEP Texas website, there's a couple of really good resources that they have there that talk about the electric and magnetic fields that come from high voltage transmission lines. We tend to direct people to a couple of studies. One is done by the National Institutes of Health and the National Institute of Environmental Health, something like that. To me, that's the most comprehensive, best resource about potential health effects from electric and magnetic fields. There's a lot out there. We encourage people to evaluate that, and if they have concerns, to express it to the Utility Commission. What the Utility Commission requires of us is to practice what they call prudent avoidance. And that means we avoid locations where people are to the greatest extent possible. And so in our routing, we intentionally avoid high population centers. We avoid coming in proximity to houses or any place that we deem to be a habitable structure. And so we avoid those to the greatest extent possible. Now, I think what most of the engineers will tell you is that the electric and magnetic fields drop off significantly by the time you get to the edge of the right-of-way. And the utilities don't allow permanent structures within the right-of-way. And so what we have commonly done is we have gone out to people's properties and we will measure the electric and magnetic fields. And when you get near the edge of the right-of-way, it's virtually zero. When you get near your microwave, it's a lot higher. When you get near your hairdryer, it's a lot higher. So if you lived under the right-of-way, in the right-of-way, you would get exposed a lot more than if you're just passing under it, even, back and forth on a tractor. But the experience that we have with electric and magnetic fields is people tend to be transient under them, and so they're not exposed long term. Our bigger concern with people is frankly standing next to their microwaves more than being near our power lines.
But they have these studies that you're referencing, are they of the real big 760?
I think the highest voltage they studied was 500 kV. But we are in the process of providing or preparing data where we can show the electric and magnetic fields that will for a 765 kV line. The other thing I will say is while these lines haven't been built in Texas, AEP has constructed and operated, the pictures I had of the 765 lines are AEP lines in the central U.S., in the Midwest, and a little bit on the East Coast. So AEP has been operating these lines for many, many years and hasn't experienced any significant adverse health effects operating these lines in their system elsewhere. But we recognize that these are unique to the state of Texas. The commission recognizes they're unique, and we support people presenting whatever information concerns they have to the commission. And if we could, we would route these where there aren't anybody near them at all, and that's easier in West Texas than it is southwest of San Antonio.
All right, any other questions?
I have a follow-up to that. How many of those studies on the AEP website were actually sponsored by the power industry? Are we looking at a cigarette company telling us that cigarettes are safe situation? I did find one study that correlated an additional cancer risk at 49 kilovolt per proximity. So has there been, most of those studies that I found on the AEP website were pretty old. Have they had a specific study related to ongoing exposure to 765 kilovolts that weren't sponsored by the power industry?
Well, let me back up. The National Institutes of Health study was a government-run,
That
government-funded.
that was a long time ago.
Well, electric and magnetic fields are the same as they were in 1990. So the potential exposure of electric and magnetic fields hasn't changed. The potential electric and magnetic fields are a physical property, but I don't disagree that we are evaluating in response to the Utility Commission asking us to develop these projects to come up with the best, some of the materials we're going to be using, are advanced conductors, and we're going to study how those will, emit electric and magnetic fields as well. And we're going to, come up with the best available information we can for the Utility Commission and the public. So that ultimately, if they approve this, it's based on the best information we can gather. So we're still evaluating all the information we can gather as well. We're engaged with consultants to provide us with the best information that we can gather, and we'll have that available to both the commission and the public.
Other questions?
I'd like to ask a follow-up question to Kirk on the earlier question about property, not property, but the possible lines changing the routes. So within that large, the large preliminary study, is it possible then that people who own property in that area but aren't even aware of the project currently could have a proposed line now going through their property as they change?
It is possible that people that have not had a preliminary segment on them or within 500 feet, that we might have a final application segment across their property, yes.
Because I can hear people, I'm not going to be on my property, so they haven't thought, they haven't thought twice about it, but they didn't know about it, right? So that's kind of naive, is what you're saying.
It's part of why we're talking to the counties to advise people that yes, we had preliminary segments, but we don't have a final application. Now, ultimately, when we do file our application, anybody that is crossed or has a habitable structure within 500 feet will get notice and will have an equal opportunity to participate at the commission on equal footing. So,
they got that 30 days, right? So they got to click on the draw at that point. Okay, thanks.
My question about the notification process, I know that there's people in the audience that feel like they either didn't get the notice in the mail, we've got how many papers in circulation in the county, not 3 still. So if it's in one paper, that means the other 2 papers very likely didn't get it. And there's people that were really caught off guard with this process. I know you can't knock on everybody's door, but is there any way that further notifications can be certified mail, something that gets people's attention when they get something out of the mailbox and don't toss it with the rest of the junk that they get on a daily basis, so that people are aware of what's going on and we don't pass a deadline having no chance to respond.
Yeah, that's good input, and we will take that back. At some point, one of the largest parts of these projects is doing property owner research. The commission rules require us to notify people based on the tax appraisal records. Depending on the county, depending on the quality of the records, those are better or less good in some counties. So we do our best to try and identify the landowners. Part of this process is if landowners feel like they were crossed or feel like their property is impacted, they didn't get a notice, to reach out to us. Let's talk about what we're showing on our property records. Ultimately, we do count a little bit on the publication notice, word of mouth. I know there's a lot of Facebook groups, there's a lot of email chains. We'll do the best we can to notify people. Ultimately, before we file our application, we will get a docket number at the commission. We do that within 25 days of filing. And we will put that up on our website. So if folks want to monitor when our application is filed, we will provide notice on each of the utility websites that we've gotten a docket number, which means we will file within 25 days. And then once you have that docket number, the commission's website is pretty good. They call it the interchange. or with that 5-digit docket number, you can see everything that gets filed in the proceeding. So you can access our application materials, and then any comment, any intervention that gets filed, you can see on the Public Utility Commission website. So we hope to get it out via this process, by visiting with the counties, in public forums like this, and then just counting on word of mouth, neighbors, letting others know if they're next door and they didn't get a notice, they're 500 feet away. Make sure that they're also aware of the project to the extent that they want to know about it. So there's a bit of a constraint, but I do take your comment that it will consider ways we might be able to improve the notice, because we've definitely gotten a lot of feedback about concern of the public. We know that these projects are unique and want to make sure that everybody who has an interest in the project can fully participate, provide comment to the extent they're interested.
And my final thought or question, the final decision about the route that you said was September or October of 26 from the PUC.
That's correct. That's anticipated. Once we get on their schedule, the statute says they're to make a decision within 180 days, but it's not uncommon for them to take a little longer. So we anticipate that it'll be September, October, but we understand these projects will be pretty high profile. So if we just looked at how the schedule would lay out, if we file in February, they would reach a decision in September, October, but we're at their schedule at
So
that.
if somebody listens to your proposed routes in February and doesn't see it crossing their property, are they in the clear? Or can the PUC change your proposed routes into some place that you don't apply for?
Mostly. So there's a process early on where the commission tells the judge, the first question they ask the judge to consider is, does this application have an adequate number of geographically diverse routes? And the judge asks the parties, does anybody dispute that this application has an adequate number of diverse routes? And if nobody challenges that, then the only routes available for the commission's decision are those that are included in the application. And that's based on the notice rules, that the idea is that if you haven't gotten a notice, you're not going to get an application across your property. So the only thing that could happen, if the judge determines we haven't provided an adequate number of routes, maybe they decide, okay, you need to add a route option up here, they would then require us to go back and notify all those landowners and start the process again. So the answer is nobody's going to get a route unless they've gotten a notice from us, or the tax record said they should have gotten a notice from us.
I have a question for you. None of us want this damn thing to come through anywhere. Why don't you produce power in West Texas? Use natural gas. San Antonio wants to close, turn off the coal plant, the last one, the other one. Why? Why not build one out there? You're going to spend $1 billion on this project. Am I right or wrong? Build a power plant out there. It can be done. This is ridiculous. No, this is insane. Tell me why you can't do it.
So under the legislation, the Public Utility Commission directed the Reliability Council of Texas, ERCOT, to study and evaluate the best way to provide reliability support to the Permian Basin region, as well as reliability for the state of Texas. And based on ERCOT's assessment of generation that's announced, generation that's interconnected, generation that's coming online, these projects were the best solution for the reliability of the state of Texas. So it wasn't CPS Energy, it wasn't AEP Texas that determined these routes. It was the Electric Reliability Council of Texas that's tasked with maintaining the reliability of the state. And they have insight as to every generation facility that's coming online, every generation facility that's proposed, and their assessment of the likelihood of those facilities coming online. The state of Texas passed legislation incenting and providing financial incentive to generators to bring needed projects forward. And as I stated a little while ago, that generation is coming on everywhere. And the fact is, given the load growth, the consumption of electricity in the state of Texas, we're going to need all the generation wherever it may be. This is not a one power plant solution. This is a all power plant solution, having transmission to move all the power throughout the state. So I appreciate that. I can't, ultimately that would have to be a question answered by the Electric Reliability Council of Texas. The commission studied ERCOT's report, and ultimately this was the proposal that they approved.
And this did start, just to follow that, it goes all the way back to 88 legislature, House Bill 5066, where the legislature said that this needed to be done, so that's where it actually started. I think it was in May of 23 when they actually enrolled this, so it actually goes back to that legislature on it. So.
That's correct.
Other questions? And I'm sorry, we're getting close to probably, we got a big agenda still in front of us, and this room's supposed to be loose at 11 o'clock. I'm not thinking that's going to happen, so. Yes?
Good morning. My name is Julie Winkler-Baronza. I'm here to speak on behalf of the Vandenberg community as well as the other pastoral colonies. Many of us have family roots that go back to the 1800s. Our family goes back to over 180 years here in Medina County. There are many historic locations in Medina County besides the formation of the pastoral colonies, the communities themselves. I'm here to speak about the Vandenberg community. And also in reference to the map that hangs in the hallway outside. It's a list of the local cemeteries that are in the county. Section 38 of this project goes on very close, if not over, the Lost Winkler Cemetery. Over the years, over the centuries, the grave markers, the rocks that used to mark the grave of the Winkler homestead. My great-great-grandfather, John Nicholas Winkler, was buried there, as well as several infants. There are also several other areas of the Vandenberg community that have unmarked cemeteries. I know that's probably the case for all around the county. I wanted to see, in the scope of this project, should this project go through the Medina County, what's the end goal? What would happen to these cemeteries? I'm looking for these cemeteries not to be disturbed, as well as other historic areas in our county. The cemetery that I'm referencing is the Winkler Cemetery, and it's near County Road 343 and County Road 445. There's also several Decker cemeteries. There's also an old Vandenberg cemetery that I'm not sure if there's grave markers. Also, a few acres away from the Vandenberg Schoolhouse, there is also areas that my father had pointed out to my sister and several other people where there are graves marked just with rocks. I just wanted to see how that would be treated so we can preserve our historic Medina County. Besides our colonists living here, in Quihee, Santa Ana's Army camped there on the way to the Alamo. My grandfather Walter Winkler, when he was growing, Walter Brown, I'm sorry, I had two Walters in the family, found remnants of Mexican Army uniforms, buttons, belt buckles, things like that. Our county is one of the most historic counties in the formation of Texas, and I think our history needs to be preserved. And anything that this county could do and or this project could do to preserve that, it would be greatly appreciated. Just as if you would be walking into the Alamo and have reverence, I think this project needs to have reverence. If they do choose to go through Medina County, we need to have reverence of our historical sites. Thank you. And here's some documentation.
I know you're trying to move this along. State law doesn't allow us to cross over dedicated cemeteries. We make every effort to identify any official dedicated cemetery. We can't cross them. Now, can we be adjacent to them? Yes, we cannot cross dedicated cemetery property. With respect to potentially unmarked or grave sites, one of the things we request information from all the archaeological agencies in the state, locally, to identify any archaeological site that is known. There's a lot of concern about confidentiality of those sites, and we take that very seriously. So we do maintain confidential information about archaeological sites. We endeavor to not share any of that information publicly. When I said we try to be an open record on everything we access, one thing that we do take very seriously is we maintain the confidentiality over archaeological sites to protect the site as well as the landowner's property so that people aren't trespassing looking for interesting archaeological artifacts. One of the things we do want public input on is if people know of grave sites, archaeological sites on their property, then please let us know so that we can identify those and consider those in our application. So this is helpful, thank you. And we will make sure that any known sites that we mark and consider those as we develop the routes for this project.
Thank you. So I think the takeaway here is you still can make comments, even though the period is closed. So if you do have anything about your property, make sure that you make those comments. I think that's really, really important. We will work on the county side as far as getting a link to the project. So maybe an easy place that everybody can go to and get to whatever links that they would have as things move along through this process. So we can certainly do that on our side. Does the court know any other questions? I appreciate all the information this morning. Thank you.
I have a couple of follow-up questions. So you did say that there were 3 lines that based on the 2023 House bill.
You want to go back to
Yeah,
the first
go
slide?
back to the first slide.
The first one.
What is the likelihood that all 3 of those will be built?
Hi. They're all, so these projects are all proceedings, so this whole process we're going through here is they're going through the same process in Central Texas. That one's being developed by Encore and LCRA, and then the top project is being developed by Encore. Those projects are actually a little further along, so the application for the northernmost projects will probably be filed sometime around November. The Central Texas projects are currently anticipated to be filed in December or January, and then this project will be in February. So the approved project is for all 3 of these projects to get built.
I guess second question was part of the prompt for something like this, Winter Storm Uri, when we had, it was 2020 more than 2023, when the grid was extremely stressed by that winter storm. Was that why ERCOT recognized this, or was it because of population growth, or what was it?
I think the best answer is, I can't speak for the legislature, but this project was informed by Winter Storm Uri, but the fact is this project is really being driven by expansive oil and gas growth and development in the Permian Basin region. And while this project will improve the reliability of the grid, and the more that power can flow if there are freezing conditions in one part of the state for power to be able to flow from a part of the state that doesn't have freezing conditions. One of the difficulties with Winter Storm Uri was that it was so expansive that there were freezing conditions throughout the state. So this isn't a Winter Storm Uri solution, it's a reliability primarily for the Permian Basin region solution. But anybody who works in the electric industry will tell you improved reliability is improved reliability, and it will help every area of the state, ultimately, a project of this scope and scale. And I will say ERCOT is now considering what we refer to as the Sept plan, which means these lines will then get connected, and then we'll get connected to Houston. So this isn't the end. These projects will ultimately connect together, and will connect both to the Houston area as well as south. So there's a phase 2 of the 765 that will provide a backbone for the kind of the grid for the state of Texas, and that's currently being studied by ERCOT right now.
One question. It's very ironic, all for these lines, I've hunted that whole country out there. They wind up at Jeff Mosel's ranch, pretty much. New Orleans, all 3 lines wind up in one ranch.
The endpoint ends up in one ranch?
That's the end point. I've hunted all that. And I've been on next door to his ranch. It's right there at Dale City, which is real close to where it says the drill hole. This is just a wild speculation on me. That's a lot of electricity going to one point.
I mean, some of the scale of
He has money to get it done.
I mean, some of the scale of this map, I think, is a little bit deceiving. Solstice is quite a ways from drill hole, 100+ miles from drill hole. And both Sand Lake and Solstice are far away from drill hole. So my answer is the Electric Reliability Council of Texas studied this based on their understanding of the power flows. We believe they're an independent organization that operates independently in how does the power need to move west. So I can't really speak to preferences of a particular landowner or lobbyist, other than, you know, the legislature requested a proposal to satisfy reliability concerns in the Permian, and ERCOT presented the commission with 3 different proposals, and this was the one that the commission then independently
And ERCOT is more than governed by Rick Abbott. Pretty much, he appointed the board. Because he took some people off the board during the snowstorm.
He doesn't, I mean, I won't get into the politics of how the ERCOT board gets approved, but listen, he definitely appoints the 5 commissioners of the utility commission.
Exactly.
Okay, other questions? Any other questions?
I have one last request. I tried to find, on the website, it talked about, fill out the questionnaire. But I could not find that questionnaire anywhere on the website. I couldn't find a link or anything. And I can't remember if that was AEP or CPS, or I was on both of them. So if it's possible to make that, where people can have input, if that would be readily accessible by the public.
It's referred to as a feedback form, I think, on the website.
I searched that. I
It's
couldn't
called
find
different
it.
things in different places, just like the line segments are referred to as links instead of segments on the
So if they
questionnaire.
just make that user friendly, that would be my request. If you don't think it's already, I couldn't find it.
And Kirk, you're gonna be here for a few minutes, if somebody has some questions outside or whatever to ask, the teams here, I'm sure they'd be glad to ask a few more questions, but just out of, literally for us to get through the rest of our meeting, we're gonna have to wrap this up, but, we really do appreciate everybody being here, your input. Kirk and the team will be here outside for a little longer. If you have some questions you'd like to ask them, certainly do so. We'll do our best to continue, to share information with everybody, and get a link on our website as things move along, and if there's some updates that need to be, opportunities, we'll have them come back and present. So,
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I think they want us to go out this way. Quick shot of the sign-in sheet. I always do this.
You want me to move that pen?
No, I got it.
There might be more than one today.
Really? Ooh, yeah. That's good. Thank you.
I don't think you. Actually, there's a third sheet. You want it? There's a third sheet. 3.
Good deal. Thank you.
Worse than you.
She likes to talk. Okay, do you have time to go to the bathroom? I was like, they'll have to wait, right?
All right, I'll have fun. We're going to go to the next one. Wow, it's quiet in here. Okay, I tell you what, we have, I'm going to drop back for just a moment to visitor, and respect for the time here, maybe move around just a little bit, being we're way behind where we normally are. Visitor public comments, Mr. Dotson, I know you have a comment. Would you like to just go ahead and do that now or wait on that way? You're more than welcome to make
I can go ahead and do it
that
now.
way you don't have to, yeah, we just
Try to move it along.
well, I'll try to help everybody out,
Yeah.
because y'all all been here a long time, so.
Good morning. My name
And
is
this is in reference to the special road tax that will be taken up, which is, the,
number 16, I believe.
16 is one of them, yes, that's correct, so. that's-
Correct. My comments on that is I commend Commissioner Sitter for seeing a problem and figuring out a way to solve the problem with the road situation in Precinct 2. I voted against the tax when it was imposed. There's no point where that tax is going to be removed or deleted, and it seems like with the improvements that or the growth that's happening, a lot of the growth is happening in Precinct 2 in the county. San Antonio's coming out, so we're getting a higher tax base in that area. And I would like to see that where the county would address the issues and remove that tax, or at least give the voters a chance to vote against that tax, or vote on the tax for or against, to where they can make their voices heard if they want to keep the tax in place. I have talked to Commissioner Sitter on this. There's a lot of money being appropriated now for the county. A lot of things happening in the county that are giving tax abatements to them that are going to affect us on the tax rate. But I would like you to consider, you're going to pass this agenda item today, and I understand that. But I would like some way to come back in where it will be brought back to the public for future consideration before that it is automatically extended.
Excellent, and just briefly, Commissioner and I have had quite a bit of discussion through this budget cycle about that. I certainly think probably by next year, we're going to be in a better position. And I don't really know right now if it has to go back or if the court can just take action if we decide to eliminate it or put some new cap on it. So we're definitely looking at all those things, and I think for sure by the time we get to the next budget year, I think we'll have some good direction on what we think that might look like.
Okay, that was my question.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Appreciate you.
Drive safe.
Yes.
Drive safe.
Definitely.
All right, and I I tell you what, I'm gonna go ahead and skip down to, are you so late, you won't make your other meeting, Gabriella?
I might make it if they have
All
a
right.
similar item.
I'm gonna go ahead and go to item number 10, because she has another meeting she's supposed to be at this morning. So we'll take up agenda item 10, discuss and take possible action to approve a master service agreement, preliminary service agreement with the Penske Ascension LLC to complete the 95% designs required by the Texas Historic Commission Courthouse Preservation Program grant. Reminder to the court, this is the grant where we discussed during budget to try to get our 95% plan set for the historic courthouse and to put us in a position, we think we'll be in a good position this year to have a very good opportunity to receive one of the grants. There's $100 million in this round. And so this last time, we only missed by a couple of points, and all of the projects were called shovel-ready projects, which ours was not. This would put us to a shovel-ready project. We had this money to be paid for in the TANs that we approved and we're being funded on. I think the 17th is still the date we're supposed to be receiving those funds. So this would be paid for out of that. We're in a very tight window. The agreement that you have in the book, in your packet, is not completely finished. There were some insurance questions which Madeline has worked through with Gabriella, and the language is not there, but I think there's an agreement that I think we're all on the same page, but we do need an updated document. So if the court, we move forward this morning, we definitely would want in that motion pending us doing those final negotiations of the terms of that. Again, this is the $1.3 million in the TANs. We have 1.2. The intention, from my point, would still be to use the money out of the TAN because we also have $1.2 million that we put in there for the Ennis Flood project, which is still at least a couple of years. So we could take, just in budgeting over the next couple of years, that $100,000 and I'll put it into a budget. But with that, I'll let Gabriella take it from there, and she has hopefully it won't be as long as the last presentation.
I can guarantee it won't be as long, not as controversial or exciting. I think, as you could tell, most of the people weren't too excited about this agenda item. So it has been quite a bit of time. So as a reminder to some that weren't here that might not remember, we were selected in 2023 under a competitive procurement process, that RFQ for design build services. We then proceeded to apply for the full restoration under the Texas Historical Commission. The county then did a full kind of upgrade and refresh on your master plan. There were some components that were missing and that were outdated. So this plan has been completed. We've had several back and forth with the THC revising that further in a way that they prefer and gets more points for the county. And so that did allow the county to get quite a few more points in the past cycle that you applied for. So I want to just make sure that everyone understands that that was not a wasted effort. That is still a requirement. So what you spent last year or 2 years now on that master plan was a valuable investment and is still a requirement that you've now passed and don't have to do anymore this year. So that being said, I do have a summary. So that master plan is about 469 pages. I did not print those for all of you.
Every page.
Yes. Our engineers had to read it. Luckily, all don't have
Commissioner
to.
said I'd like you to read the entire document.
And that's a summary document as well. So this just summarizes what the scoring was for Medina County. It also talks about the master plan and just summarizes some of the contents that are in there just to explain what that is and what was done. And then lastly, it has a summary of the financial information from last cycle. So as you'll see, the 1.3 million is in line with last year's planning cost estimate. So we did a full estimate of probable cost, and in that estimate, there are quite a few items. So Because the Texas Historical Commission grants take a bit of time, we account for escalation and prefer to be over than under, if you'll understand, because we haven't been awarded yet, and so that budgeting process did count for escalation over a couple of years. That's why you'll see the 12.6 numbers. That also includes all items required for restoration. That's furnishings and equipment, things that would be additional that the county typically takes care of outside of a typical infrastructure project. But all of that, kind of AV, desks, all of those things required in full restoration, that's all included in that 12.6 number. Currently, the THC has a cap of 10 million. We are in discussions with the THC to see if they'd be willing to increase that number. They have not decided yet in either direction. But as you'll see, the planning number was about 1.399, and we're at 1.3 to do the full planning. What would be included is 95% design. That's not customary in a design build process. Typically, the way that we do projects when we work with counties is we've done emergency operations centers, justice centers, annexes, sheriff's offices, and typically we do planning, and then we do 30%, check back with the committees that are in charge of that building or that will be occupying, and then we continue revising until 60%. At 60%, we then go into full construction, and that truncates the construction process. It's more accurate, and there's been studies shown by third parties that it decreases the cost of construction. That's our standard process. Because this deals with the Texas Historical Commission and they have certain requirements for how far you have to go in design, we can't do that process. It has to be all the way to 95%. If I were Medina County and I was going to 95% on a building, I would ask myself, well, what happens when you change terms, the commissioners change, or judges change, or the folks in charge change? That's the risk of spending and going so far into design, because it takes time, and then by the next year, the following year, what happens if the occupants' requirements have changed? That risk is close to none with a historic building because you don't have a lot of wiggle room. And so if I was Medina County, that would be one thing that would put me at ease, that this is an investment that will have to get spent. The most that you would have to do, worst case scenario, if you didn't receive the funds, is that you would just have to do a refresh of the estimate and of probable cost, but you would not have to redo the full design because it is a historic building and it has to be back to that 1942 period of significance. So just if I were real, that is something I would want to know. I'll also emphasize that what's been done has been an existing conditions analysis, so that's what informed our budgets and what informed kind of the schedule that we have for design and construction. We also did a room-by-room finish schedule. At the very end of your packet, you'll see an attachment of the floor plans. In the master plan, there are several floor plan scenarios. What this does is lets us have a conversation with the THC as to, there's an option for pure restoration down to exactly how it was, and then there's other scenarios for being a little bit more amenable to current function and operations as you need now and as you'll need in the future. And that typically gets a conversation going. The THC is an understanding that you can't have the same technology in offices and records keeping that you had back when your courthouse was constructed. It also has preservation zoning diagrams, record management plan, that estimate of probable cost. Your court minutes since 2000, we had to consolidate those as well. What that does is it documents any changes that you've done to your courthouse. So there were a couple of points, luckily it wasn't too great, but you did receive a doc of a few points just for doing minor painting and things to your courthouse. We did try to have that conversation because what it was is just you're maintaining your courthouse and making sure it's looking good, but you did get a couple points docked there.
Yeah, we got the side item a couple of times, paintings and things we do.
Yes, but you got the full 14 points for saying that you would return those things back to what they were. The biggest component in your scoring sheet that you got docked, not docked, but you received 0 points for, was the shovel-ready status. So that is the 95% design. So I think what the county chose to do the first time around is let's shoot for both the planning and the construction grant. You were 3 points away from the next county that got awarded. So that's another good sign that you will be competitive in this next cycle. The other thing is that there were limited funds. There was about 46 million, I believe, 40 when it really came down to it, because I think 6 got allocated to other emergency items that came up. And so now they have about 100 million, and so more people that they can fund. In the history of the program, they've given out about 400 million, so that's a fourth of what they've given out since the program has began. So that was great legislation. You know, the THC, your local rep was very excited about that. So what we've done in the past couple of months and weeks is that we put out a competitive bid request for proposals for preservation architects. We had a partner that helped us through the master plan. We have in-house architects, but if it's going to make it more competitive to have a preservation architect, we will partner up with one. So we had selected Architectus, but to do our due diligence, we went back out, received a lot of proposals, which is great because it means that those folks are looking at how we scored last year, and a lot of architects were excited to work on Medina counties, and we ended up going with Architectus as well. There were some that were slightly under their amount, but when McKinstry weighed the scoring criteria, the experience of that architect and how many successful applications they've supported with, and we've worked with them as well, and how timely and communicative, and we're in a tight timeline right now, and they're the ones that really deliver, so it was our recommendation that it was worth spending a little bit more on someone that has the track record. That being said, we have sent our master services agreement and our preliminary services agreement over to your attorney. We have had a little bit of back and forth. So far, all the terms or the questions that Medina County has had, we've been able to address. With the insurance comments and questions, we did give a sample certificate of liability insurance, and everything that Medina County specified, we're happy to comply with. I think the COI is at a minimum. What we attach if the county has no requirements, and there were, I think, 1 or 2 items that were above, and our insurance person's happy to extend the policy for what you requested. And so I know a lot of counties, sometimes when we're in the final portions of getting some wording right on the contract, you'll list it as pending legal review. That way, nothing is signed until your attorney has checked off that it's approved and good to go, but it doesn't delay us another 3 weeks or a month potentially, which is critical time for the timeline we're under. We have to submit drafts in January, and then another submission in May, and the one before that in April. So it takes a lot of back and forth with the THC. They're a great group to work with, but currently understaffed by 2 people, so we're just trying to get ahead of that timeline. So we've already started prepping materials and putting things together in advance to the new applications and being released later this month. So.
One question, when you were talking about the number of points and the different variables that you points, what is the max number of points that we could get for project readiness? Because you said we got 10. 10. Okay. So we missed the cutoff by
3 by the next county that got awarded.
Yes, and we have the potential to get 10, and probably if we get it to 95%, we won't get the 10, but we'll get something.
You'll get the 10.
You'll get the 10?
Mm-hmm. The minimum to get the 10 is the 95%. That's your considered shovel ready.
Okay.
Yeah, I think one of the neat things is that Gabriella mentioned in there, they have a lot of interest from architects on our project, because they know the potential. You know, obviously the architects want a project that's going to get funded and take it to the end. So yeah, I think this will put us in a really good position.
So that extra 10 points is huge.
It's defining. There are a couple more that we could capture. I think there's historic designation that's pretty easy to get. An additional one that would get you 2 points higher. But as far as the biggest, that one is the biggest one, and then the other one is county revenues. That's calculated just based off your county revenue, so that one doesn't move a lot. I think you got at the midpoint, the top is 20, but the 10 is the biggest impact.
Okay.
Judge, I had a question.
Yes.
So, just so that we understand also in our office, because we weren't aware of this, going to court or anything, so I'm just trying to kind of scramble through it to try to figure it out. So, last time, we didn't get the grant.
No.
This time, we're having to pay you $1.3 million in the hopes to get the grant again?
Yes.
So I guess the difference between the first time and this time is that there were certain things that were not that we're not as further along as the other individuals that had applied for the grant, and so we were not awarded. And so then the money that we've already spent, just want to make sure that, I know you kind of mentioned it, that we're still able to build off of that?
Yes.
Because I know we spent quite a bit of money the first time around, and then now we're going to be 1.3 million. So, and then the goal is to hit 10 million?
So I think the county spent around 75,000. My
The
memory's
grant's
a little
10
bit.
million.
Right.
The grant funds are
Right.
10 million.
Yes. So typically in other grant applications, they're not offering such a big award, or it's not such a big proportion of their budget, so they don't require counties to have, so there's always a match, usually a match requirement. But in this case, the Texas Historical Commission would be awarding quite a bit, like 10 million is the cap. So they ask that counties have more skin in the game, if you will, that's their language, to show mutual investment, that if they're going to give you 10 million, that you're going to put in a little bit as well. So that's what leads to the match requirement. And so your planning, what you'd be spending now in the planning, would be able to satisfy your match requirement.
Okay, so the first time it didn't satisfy the match, correct? But this time it will.
Master plans don't count, yeah, in the match requirement, but planning and design does. Last cycle, I think it was either timing or the county wanting to see how close you could get without spending. The difference between 75,000 and 1.3 million is quite great. So I think that allowed us to see how close you could get. A lot of other counties had started doing their planning and their design. So there were some that had applied already for several cycles. So typically it takes a county a couple cycles of applying, where you kind of learn the scoring and you kind of learn what ranks you higher. But most of the time, because of their restricted funding, unless you have something great that affects your courthouse, like Refugio County had a hurricane hit their courthouse, and so they got the largest emergency grant without having to do so much planning and putting down. But that's an extenuating circumstance. Typically, counties try to advance and get more competitive by getting the full 95% design. And design is typically 10 to 12% of the total project cost. That's kind of a standard. So that's why I was saying McKinstry typically tries to work with county budget-wise to do 30 to 60 and then get into your construction contract and help with the grants. But this is just a different requirement, so the 95 is required to be competitive. But none of the funds that the county has already spent are wasted. They are a requirement that's already checked off. You're on the list of counties that are allowed to apply for the full construction grant. Does that answer?
Yes, and if you can get with our office so that we can kind of chat also.
Auditors?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. We used to work with Eduardo, so
Okay,
I'll reach out.
Perfect, thank you.
All right, so again, with that, thank you for all the information. I would entertain a motion that, if we may have a motion, if we could please just make sure that it's in final negotiation of the documents.
I will make a motion that we approve a master service agreement and a preliminary service agreement with McKinstry Ascension LLC pending legal review or final negotiations to complete the 95% design as required by the Texas Historic Commission Courthouse Preservation Program grant.
Second.
I have a motion as stated by Commissioner Lynch, seconded by Commissioner Castellini. Any other discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. All right, let's see, back to item 4, discuss and take possible action to approve the August 25th, 2025 Commissioner Court meeting minutes of, and I just, I'm trying to think who this is. Ruby, would you mind? I know we're supposed to have a meeting at 11. To see if they could go ahead, and I don't want to, we're not going to be done by 11 for sure. See if they could use the room across, maybe.
Okay.
Is the elections room open?
I think so. I can
Okay,
go
would
check.
you mind just, I know there's some of the people already out there.
Who's supposed to meet? Whoever's out there?
Scooter,
I'm sorry.
All the water.
it's the,
Oh.
yeah, I think Scooter's probably out there, some multiple people. Okay, so we're on Commissioner's Court meeting minutes. I did give the clerk's office these updates. The yellow is just the changes I made, so we don't really need to do it with changes because it's what you have. We can y'all approve these minutes, then y'all just need to update on where we're adding the yellow parts to make sure they match if you would.
I'll make a motion to approve the August 25th, 2025 Commission Court meeting minutes.
Second. Have a motion by Commissioner Sitter, second by Commissioner Lynch to approve the August 23rd, 2025 meeting minutes. Any other discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item number 5, discuss take possible action to approve the personnel action forms.
Good morning, Judge, Commissioners.
Good afternoon.
Not quite, not quite, not quite.
So we have 13 of these. So the first one we have is for employee named Alexandra Sabella, and that's under Department Head Mark Cavey, and that is for a new hire. Next, we have Julie Solis under Department Head Mark Cavey, and that is a change in the pay schedule. Next, it's also for, under Mark Cavey, for Jeffrey Dials, and that is a change in pay schedule. Next PF we have is on Paul Talamantes, and that is also under Department Head Mark Cavey, and that is for another change in pay schedule. Next one we have is for Daphne Pravidi under Mark Cavey, and that one is also changing pay schedule. And the next one we have is for Margaret Swires under Department Head Mark Cavey, also a change in pay schedule. Next, we have an employee named Deborah Langford under Department Head Mark Cavey, and that one is as well a change in pay schedule. Next, we have Gilbert Valdez under Department Head Mark Cavey, another change in pay schedule. Next PF we have is on Barry Parker, and that is under Department Head Mark Cavey as well, and that is a change in pay schedule. And under Department Head Mark Cavey, we have Maria Alanis, and that one is a change in pay schedule. Next, we have employee named Enrique Lopez under Department Head Randy Brown, and that one is a new hire. Next, we have Santiago Perez under Department Head Randy Brown, and that is an increase with an approved slot. And the last one we have is for Victor Lopez under Department Head Carly Cannell, and that one is a new hire.
Thanks. And just for clarity on those, I think I'm right on this just to make sure, but the district attorney's office is all but the one new hire were because of Senate Bill 22. This is our cleanup on Senate Bill 22.
Correct.
We did the same thing last year on some remaining funds that were still left in Senate Bill 22, so that's what those adjustments are actually representing. All the money is Senate Bill 22 money.
That's correct.
I think in the future that we need that needs to be included in the general remarks for each of these individual
It'd be nice.
personal action forms. Because when I'm looking at this, prepping for the meeting, I always have, those questions.
That'd be good, yeah, we can add that into the request at the bottom. Yeah. Okay.
Noted.
Question is, we don't know how long Senate Bill 22 money will be around.
Well, but she's saying when the PAFs come out, just that it was on here, because it would answer the question.
I'll make a motion that we approve the personnel action forms.
Second.
Have a motion by Commissioner Lawler, second by Commissioner Castiglione to approve the personnel action forms. Any other discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 6, discuss and take possible action to authorize loaning the employee personal account $150,000 to the general fund to cover monthly premiums, dental claims, and miscellaneous wellness expenses to be repaid at completion of the payroll transfer on 10/2 of 2025. Ruby, we just got to the $150,000 employee trust account. Literally, we just
Just finished reading it.
So the way that payroll falls, we just need to ask if we can borrow from from the general fund, then we'll pay it back once
we get that payroll process, and then we'll have the funds, you know, when the employees pay into employee trust, we'll pay it back to the general fund. It's just the way this last payroll falls. I think this was done last year.
Yes, it was.
I'll make a motion to authorize loaning the employee trust account $150,000 from the general fund to cover monthly premiums, no claims, and miscellaneous loans expenses to be repaid upon completion of payroll transfer.
Second.
Have a motion is stated by Commissioner Lynch, seconded by Commissioner Waller. Any other discussion? All in favor, aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 7, discuss and take possible action to approve the county treasurer's monthly report.
All right. This monthly report is for July. So the month ending for Medina County combined funds is $28,096,428.80. The month ending total debt owed by Medina County is $20,845,000.
I'll make a motion to approve the county treasurer's monthly report.
Have a motion by Commissioner Castiglione, second by Commissioner Sitter to approve the county treasurer's monthly report. Any other discussion? All in favor, aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 8, discuss and take possible action to approve the accounts payable.
All right, the total for accounts payable is $406,001.76. There were no wires, and then invoices over $10,000 are on the cover sheet.
approve accounts payable accepting VA forfeiture fund 51 on page 10. Second.
Have a motion by Commissioner Lynch, second by Commissioner Waller, to approve the accounts payable with the exception of the DA Fund 51. Any other discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 9, discuss and take possible action to approve disbursement of funds since last Commissioners Court meeting.
All right, we paid fuel, utilities, and dental claims in the amount of $38,285.69.
I'll make a motion to approve the disbursement of funds since the last Commissioners Court meeting.
Second.
Have a motion by Commissioner Castiglione, second by Commissioner Sitter to approve the disbursement of funds since the last Commissioners Court meeting. Any other discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, we are going to move, just because we need to do our public hearings first, out of order on here, so item number 13, which will be public hearing to receive public comment regarding the proposed 2025 Medina County tax rate of .4434 per $100 of valuation. This is a public hearing. I will open the public hearing. It is 10:53 a.m. Do we have anybody from the public that would like to make a comment? I'll give it at least
30 seconds.
here. It's hard when you can go from 10:53 to 10:54, because if I'm going to wait on another, I signed it to 10:54. It's like hard to close it at the same time, so.
All day long.
Yes. Okay, hearing none, I will go ahead and close it at 10:54 a.m. Item 14 is a public hearing to receive public comment regarding the proposed 2025 Medina County Precinct 2 special road tax of .0364 per $100 valuation. Again, this is a public hearing. It is 10:54 a.m. and I'm going to open that public hearing. Is there anybody here with comments on the .0364 tax? Of course, we do have noted the one public comment that was made. Okay, hearing none, it is 10:55 a.m. and we will close the public comment, the public hearing. And that will take us back to item number 11. This is a public hearing to allow public comment regarding the proposed Medina County fiscal year 2025-2026 budget. Texas Government Code 551.043 from House Bill 1522 taxpayer impact statement notice as follows. The fiscal year 2024-2025, which was tax year 2024, adopted tax rate of .4511 per $100 evaluation on the median homestead taxable value of $262,674 resulted in a $1,184.92 tax on the median homestead. The proposed fiscal year 25-26 tax year, which is the one we're working on, year 2025 budget, based on a proposed tax rate of .4434 per 100 evaluation on a median homestead taxable value of $280,197 would result in a $1,242.39 tax on the median homestead. The adoption of a balanced budget if funded at the no new revenue rate of .4295 per $100 evaluation on the median homestead taxable value of $280,197 would result in a $1,203.45 tax on the median homestead. The fiscal year 2025-2026 proposed budget has been filed with the county clerk as prescribed by law and posted prominently on the Medina County homepage and website at medinatx.gov under budgets. So with that said, this is for public hearing. It is 10:57. I will open the hearing at 10:57. And I'm going to direct the court's attention to, in your packet under agenda item number 11, on your packet. Just do want to run through a few things while we're in public hearing. Since our last budget hearing, so I did provide the court with a few items. You have a cover page in there that just talks about and breaks out what the tweaks were between where we ended up last and where we are this morning, and it recaps those items. So in the general fund, as you can see, the revised proposed surplus was $35,286.17, and changes in that fund were that on the court coordinator 2 in the district court, I had that in as a clerk, and it's not in fact a clerk, it's a court coordinator, so there was a $19,936 difference in that. The special fund special tax, $351,280 surplus decrease. The revenue was lowered, and you can see there by changing the tax rate to the no new revenue. So that was one of the changes that was made. The 23 fund, which is precinct 3, you can see the adjustments that were made in that one. And then a small change in the debt and sinking to align with the payments. And then in the fund for juvenile probation, surplus decrease of $10,795, which were moved to expenses within the fund. So the adopted deficit, it shows 407,122.44. However, if you all remember, that includes from the general fund $500,000 that we do not plan on spending, that we put in there as contingency money. So it's actually $35,000 to the surplus, which is that top line. If we don't spend any contingency, if nothing would come up, so we're at. But there, it does reflect that $500,000 that we put in there. And then also the 12 fund, we moved $30,000 from the jail because they'd already done that scan of the big machine that was needing an upgrade. We did that, so we moved that out of there and moved it into the Hondo buildings and grounds line as well. And then the 21, 22, 24 in the precinct funds, there's some increased fund balances. Again, just to make it all where you all had access to the reserves as you needed those. So. Then right behind that sheet, I've just provided separate from the budget, and we don't have to go through them necessarily line by line, but we could come through them. The first one just shows that fund balance of the $500, so the page 1 there is where we did the $500,000 of surplus, if it was our contingency, if it was needed, and it shows in the contingency reserves on the next page. And then the workman's compensation, there was a small adjustment on the next page and unemployment line. And in district courts, what we talked about a moment ago, so those were just the 19,000 plus how it affected the FICA and retirement. The next one is the capital outlay on the district clerk. What's that one? I'm trying to have a see what the difference is on that one.
For the software?
What was it?
The software?
Was that the software? For the
Enterprise.
For the enterprise justice, okay, so that was the difference in that one. Then the next one, Castroville Buildings and Grounds, there was a slight adjustment on the capital outlay on it. The next one's just the precinct tax reflected the correct amount there of the 909,090. And then the contingency, which shows your reserves available in that fund, Commissioner. The next one is the precinct 1, showing the fund balance and your contingency reserves in precinct 1. The next one is precinct 2 for the fund balance. Followed by precinct 3 for the fund balance and contingencies. Then on page books 36 and 96, it says precinct 3, the adjustments that were made on that one. Precinct 4 is then showing the fund balance on what says page 37. And page 38, the reserves portion of it. Page 52, that's a slight change in the fund balance on the debts on the debt service. That was an adjustment we made to make sure we had the correct debt payment in there. The 400 fund, the disbursements, the 2.180 million. We might come back to that one in a second. That one's not in my head already at this moment.
Jennifer.
Judge, so that was the final numbers that came from Samco for the principal and interest for the new team.
Okay, so that's the disbursement side of the debt.
Correct.
Okay, that's the disbursement side of the debt, the 2.80 and the interest of 833, so the total is 3,013,630,167. The next page, 55, is where we brought the TAN revenue into the budget, the 4.5 million, and then broke out into the different revenues. As you just look down the page, that's where those by departments, we got those put into the budget. Page 56 is the rest of that. Page 73, juvenile basic pro supervision change.
So I know there were some changes to juvenile probation just as the budgets came through.
Okay. Yeah, it changed a little bit. It wasn't that much. I don't remember the other color of the one before. And all of those all adjustments within the juvenile probation on that page 73 and 74 as well. So those are the highlights, or those are the changes, and then further back without a highlight, I did include the entirety of the budget. I just trying to make it easiest for you all. So with that said, the next page that you have, and if you could put up had to happen eventually. Sarah, thank you, Sarah, for driving everything. I appreciate it. I do want to share just a couple of this recap that we used last year with everybody. So the tax levy increase was $2,311,087, and just kind of giving a breakdown, which I like to do, to where did that money go and what's it used for. So salaries and COLA with our 2.5% increase this year was $579,975. Out of that, the court remembers probably about $118,000 of that was actually just bringing people up in the salary survey. And then precinct increases in revenue was $552,000. Our health insurance increases were $218,300. Probably worth at least a note to put out there that next year, we still have employees that we're only paying $50 per employee per month, and we may need to look to do a little something on that. I mean, it's just to kind of help with this, because as y'all know, every year it just keeps going up and up and up on our insurance. Then we had one environmental health group and one animal control vehicle that we had in here. Our enterprise justice software, which is Odyssey, that is the software that is provided for all the courts to use with $141,000. The Nueces River flood mapping project was $47,000. Our seasonal elections workers had an increase of $86,500. Our sheriff's office, for their 2 deputy vehicles, and I'm sorry, I just realized I passed that over the new employees at the top, I'll run back there. But this is actually for the vehicles, $127,500, just to provide 2 vehicles for the sheriff's people. And then public defender, there was a little increase in our contribution to them of $58,000. And if I should go back to the top, I'm not sure how I looked over the new employees, 2 part-times and 6 full-time employees, was $354,000. And just a reminder on those, the part-times that we have is our veteran service officer, which I gave you guys the next page, of color coded everybody green. And then the county clerk for records management, we're a couple of part-times. And then our full-times is our district court, the other court coordinator, of course, Judge Kinder has always just had 1 person in his office, so we'll finally have a second person up there to help them. They're growing and busier all the time. Tax assessor collector, we added 1 spot for them. We added a spot for a warrants and expedition clerk at the sheriff's office. We did add 2 deputies to the sheriff's office and added another dispatcher at the sheriff's office. And then there's also one other full-time employee as a school resource officer. However, that is reimbursed to us, so that's why it is in yellow versus the others. Going back to the chart there that you have in front of you, a couple of other things of note on the chart is I did put in the exemptions over there, what I showed that they sent over to are over 65 exemptions, and this is just raw value of exemptions. You can see almost $83.5 million of over 65 exemptions. And I just put what the value of that would be to the county if we were getting it at the new tax rate. It was about $370,000. That was on 6,688 properties, at an average of $12,480 per. And then our disabled veteran exemptions, $748 million in veterans exemptions, which is a county valuation of $3,318,958. There's 3,264 properties, which averages about $230,000 per property. And of course, that's one that we're still, working with legislation. Hopefully, at some point, get some of that money reimbursed from the state to the county. Total general fund budget.
Question on that.
Yes, I'm sorry.
So you're saying there's roughly $750 million worth of disabled veteran-owned properties
That's right.
in Medina County.
Yep.
Averages $229,000, and the value of that exemption per year to Medina County is $3.3 million.
$3.3,318,958 is what I've calculated out for this year.
And so we were working with the legislature and other similar counties that have a high number of disabled veterans within the county to see what can be done to replace that lost property tax to those counties.
Got a little over this session.
Okay.
Yeah, they did make some improvements to it. I'm actually going to look at this with the auditor because it's one of the things I'm going to go back and crunch on here because now it's has to do with being right next to them. We don't qualify on that piece of it the way it was written, but then it has to do another portion. I think is 10% of the budget. So depending, I need to see what that 10% of the budget means. If that's 10% of the general fund, is that 10% of overall budget? Because if our on one hand, if we're 32,800,000, then it is 10%. But I need to go evaluate that some more because we also have a $7 million budget when you put precincts and all those items into it. So we need to we'll get that legislation back out, take a look at it, may have to make some calls. It's also new, but definitely we'll need to take a look at this.
Yeah, but I think it was Bell County was 52% go by pay taxes.
Right.
That's pretty well.
So it's something we continue to work on, but I do need to evaluate. That's the basics of it, but I don't know, I've not seen the criteria. Where does the 10% come from? So it's something.
This page has a lot of information on it. Thank you.
Yeah, this is great.
And then I just want to point out right under that general fund number, unfunded mandates, we always talk about them. I did in my first year here, went back and took a look, and it was actually over 60% what Eduardo and I calculated at the time of, and so this is state things that they're having the county do that we pay for. And so as they're looking and trying to lower property taxes and what they tell us we should be doing, I just think it's important to point out that we have $32 million, but being conservative at 55% of that, 18 million of those dollars are things that Medina County is doing on behalf of the state of Texas, that we pay for, and our citizens pay for. And every legislative session, we're fighting against that because there was always more unfunded mandates coming our way. So I think that's an important number. Also, at the very bottom of the chart, the levy increase from existing properties was $586,687. And the levy increase, so brand new properties brought in 1.7 million of that new money that came to us.
Okay, question on that 1.7 million, that is not regulated by the 3.5 that we're going to do.
That's
So
right.
that's left alone.
That's
The only thing that we are affected by is the 566 million. Yeah, okay, good enough.
And then also just of note in here that inside of this previous year's budget of unbudgeted items that did come out of our reserves is $1.2 million that we spent to do the retainage from this project where we built this building and the jail project. And then at the top right, tax rates. I won't go through them all, but as you can see, Medina County, at 4434, we continue to be the lowest of the rates around us, and you can actually see there's some that have increased this year over last year. And then right below that, the next chart's just showing that the history. So from 2015, we went from 0.5517 down to 0.4434 since 2015. So we keep trying to reducing that rate, and the only reason that rate is reducing is because of the growth in the county. The $1.7 million that we just talked about is
So
the reason
you're looking at
we're able to do this.
3/4 of the growth in our revenue is from new property.
That's correct. And then general fund balance, just showing the history of our general fund balance. You can see from starting back in 1819, we had 11 million. We're projecting at year end here, 15,794,000 is where we're projecting in. Right, and at the very bottom, the cash on hand and the recommended month supply, that 15,794,000 would give us a 6.5 month supply. We have an average of $2.4 million per month that our expenses are. The recommended is 6 to 8. I think the healthy thing is to definitely be with the 8, not the 6. And if anybody would want to debate that, I would challenge them to pick up the phone and call the county judge in Kirk County and ask him how many months supply of cash you need. I mean, it's you can have no cash. It sounds like a lot of money, but $16 million in one of those situations can really go fast. So I wanted to share that with you. The last thing I wanted to share with you all, and we can get back to any questions here, is I asked, this is our general fund. I just thought it was interesting and something that the public really could wrap their heads around here. So in our general fund, this is a pie chart by department of where the money goes. And so I just like to take, if you write a check to the county for $1,000, and you look at law enforcement, the sheriff's office, $240 of those would go to cover $240, that would go to the sheriff for the law enforcement side. $130 or 13% of that would go to the jail. So between our public safety side, 37% of our general fund is just to take care of the sheriffs and the jail. Which we know that up here, but I don't think the public always knows how much it costs to do those things. The next item below that, district court, 8%. And district court, to put that in perspective, that's about $2.6 million for district court. I think that really is one of those that's interesting if you tie it back to what district court is. That's really state court, right? So when we talk about unfunded mandates and what it costs us to run that court, $2.6 million. Buildings and grounds, which is operations of our buildings and grounds, is 6% of the budget. 5% was other. When it got kind of down to the end, it was just miscellaneous. The financial side, 4%. Tax assessor, 4%. The JPs are 3% of the budget. The county clerks, 2% of the budget. Elections, 2% of the budget. And county court at law is 2% of the budget. Emergency management is 1% of the budget. And county admin is 1% of the budget. So that's a look at our general fund and kind of hopefully help people get a little better idea of where does that money go when you write a check to the county for your taxes.
I'm gonna say something here, I'm very proud of it. I hope all the newspapers, if you don't do nothing else to get this here published, within the 5 counties surrounding Medina County, we are 47% cheaper than Uvalde. We're 48% cheaper than Freeland. We're 15% cheaper than Van Buren. We're 10% cheaper than Atascosa, and that's when people have arguments all the time. So you get the same house, I got some of the people down in Atascosa, if you want cheaper taxes, just come to Medina County. You know, we're doing something right. When you have 5 other counties that are nowhere even close to us, and I can get you down south, they're up to 70% tax to where we're sitting here at 44. So, you know, nobody likes to pay taxes, but for what we got going on, we're lucky to have the good growth we're having. Some people are having bad growth, and I don't want to get into that. But your tax rate today, with everything going on, is 50% cheaper than Uvalde County. So that's it. That's all I got. Keith, I can't thank y'all enough for putting this information together. Y'all have done, the auditor's office and you, it's just stand up next to none that I've ever been through.
Excellent. So that is, I've just tried to lay it out because this is the public hearing. So I'm going to actually open the actual public hearing up here. What's that?
You opened a public hearing.
You did at 10:57.
Open this.
I did one, well, the last one I was 10:55, I closed the item 14. And then we went back to 11, and I read the agenda item, and then I made the presentation. So I closed it at 10:55. I wrote it down. Yeah, we did. So I'm going to open this. I just wanted to lay all of this out because if somebody does have comments, I wanted to provide good information to everybody. And it is 11:20 a.m. So again, we're on item 11 still. It's 11:20, and I will open it up to public comments. Is there anybody here that would like to make public comments on the budget?
Judge, if there aren't any public comments, could I ask a question?
Yes, absolutely, you may.
Can I get a copy of that pie chart?
Absolutely.
And this also?
Yes, thank you for asking.
She asked that, can you give some examples of the non-departmental piece of that pie?
So telephones, non-departmental would be the things it just takes to make the county operate. That we don't put to a department, but like phones, utilities.
All our health insurance.
Health insurance.
Premiums for putting in.
I think they got it all in there if you want to read it.
Well, it's in there in the non-departmental budget, you can find those items.
She publishes this pie chart, we're going to ask what's non-departmental, what's that?
What's that?
Bonnie, are you here for the water board meeting?
I was, but I'll see.
Oh, you're already done? Okay.
She came to the interesting meeting,
I know.
but we, I have no problem.
Thank you. Is that somewhere else?
What's that?
She said, is it somewhere else?
Yeah, it's in the.
It's in the elections office.
Oh, yes, sorry, Bonnie.
You're good.
I didn't see.
This is a whole lot more interesting across the hall.
Yes, absolutely. All right, any other comments? Anybody else? If not, I will close at 11:21. Commissioner Lynch is right, and I opened it earlier, it will definitely close at 11:21. Well, and I may be wrong also, so. All right, so Ruby, well, I'll tell you what, let me do this agenda item, I'll give you a couple of comments. Item 12, discuss and take possible action to adopt the Medina County fiscal year 2025-2026 budget. And I am not going to read the statement again, but we also just in this agenda item have the same taxpayer impact statement that I read in agenda item number 11. I don't have anything further to add. I definitely have said all I needed to say on there, but Ruby, I think you had a couple of comments.
Yes, I did. Good morning, commissioners. Basically, what I wanted to do is summarize the process of us getting to this point where you're about to adopt this budget. And as you stated, it's been a very data-driven budget. So, Judge, we appreciate all the questions that we received because it kind of helped us also kind of dive into a lot of details. And so what I did is kind of wrote down briefly some of the various analysis that we did just to come up with this budget. We did the JP revenue analysis, which requires us to go into their software and analyze the citations, the number of citations, and of course the revenue that brings in. We did a constable mileage analysis, basically going through the whole year's worth of what the constable reports send, the reports that are sent to us, and analyze that data. We've done various revenue projections based on history. So a lot of times when you look at the revenue, you kind of wonder how did they come up with this number. A lot of it is based on history and anything that we're projecting to receive as far as revenue is concerned. Expense projections was done the same way, but it's basically, we analyzed the historical activity, but if we knew that there was expenses that we expected to, like if there was an increase, we also showed that in the budget as well. And your budgets also have extensive notes, so anytime any of us made any kind of changes, we forget because this is a multi-month project. So we made sure that we added notes if something was lowered or increased. And of course, last but not least, the one that I could think of was the salary survey. This was a very extensive project that lasted 6 to 7 months, where it was not something that we could just come up with overnight. It's something that took several months to complete and then get that data so that we can show you the results of that. So with that, obviously couldn't do that on my own. We have an amazing team, Sarah, Ernesto, and Jennifer, who really stepped up. And then we had, whenever normal operations were continuing, we had Rachel and Alicia to continue our operations. So I just wanted to thank them and everything that they did for this budget.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, I'm going to entertain a motion on item 12.
I'll make a motion to adopt the Medina County fiscal year 2025-26 budget.
Second.
Have a motion from Commissioner Sitter, second by Commissioner Long, to adopt the Medina County fiscal year 25-26 budget. Any other discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item number 15, discuss and take possible action to adopt a Medina County property tax rate of 0.4434, which is effectively a 3.24% increase in the tax rate. This one, Court, I do have a motion there that we need to be specific on our motion.
I I will move that the property tax rate be increased by the adoption of the tax rate of .4434, which effectively is a 3.24% increase in tax rate.
I have a motion from Commissioner Sitter, second by Commissioner Lynch, that the property tax rate be increased by adoption of the tax rate of .4434, which is effectively a 3.24% increase in the tax rate. Any other discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 16, discuss and take possible action to adopt a tax rate of .0364 cents for the 2025 Medina County Precinct Number 2 Special Road Tax Rate.
I will make a motion that we adopt a tax rate of .0364 cents for the 2025 Medina County Precinct 2 Special Road Tax.
Second.
I have a motion from Commissioner Sitter, second by Commissioner Lawler, to adopt a tax rate of .0364 cents for the 2025 Medina County Precinct Number 2 Special Road Tax Rate. Any other discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item number 17, discuss and take possible action to adopt the 2021 International Fire Code with the changes, amendments noted in Exhibit A to be known as the Medina County Fire Code. Mr. Chapman, good morning.
Good morning, Judge and Commissioner.
Dan, all right?
Almost good afternoon.
That's it.
So since the first time we presented in February, there's been a lot of work that's been accomplished on this, and a lot of information that I hope has been provided to allow some clarification. So some of the things that we've addressed, for example, pre-existing buildings. Buildings are already built in the county. Those kinds of buildings fall under what's called pre-existing building inspection. Unless a building is modified to 50% or more, or a 30% change to a load-bearing structure, those buildings continue to be inspected based upon the codes at the time that they were built. And we've actually identified what we would be looking at on those. I also pulled together the General Construction and Life Safety Code requirements, and that was included in the information that I gave you. So if you want to know on new construction, and this is for our small business owners and people like that in Medina County that are going to build, there are only 15 items that we consider on general construction and life safety. Those are going to be our general standards for all those buildings. And most of it is very, very simple. Stuff like the address identification has to be 4 inches tall so it can be seen from the road. And we don't care if you do that in paint, crayon, or whatever it is, as long as it can be seen from the road. Walls with a minimum of a 1 hour fire rating. Now that sounds, a little austere, but a 1 hour firewall is just, it's normal construction. It's a half inch of sheetrock on either side of the wall. Doesn't matter what's on the interior, whether it's wood, metal, etc. Then making sure the general electrical wiring is installed appropriately with the kinds of covers that you need. Places that would have a lot of water, moisture, bathrooms, kitchens, those kind of things have a GFCI. Looking at the breaker panel, just making sure that they have the appropriate breakers. Smoke detectors that are installed that draw primary power from the electrical system with battery backup, which is general. Fire extinguisher, you want to see 1 5-pound fire extinguisher, ABC pipe. And then if you have large hallways, long hallways, one of those fire extinguishers should be within 75 feet of the exit. And we should have one every 75 feet, which could be accomplished in a 150-foot hallway by putting one in the middle. Clear egress, 36 inches. Egress doors that are normally locked should have push bars so that from the interior, if there's a fire emergency of some type, that it's generally referred to by inspectors as dead man's So a person falling against the door could open the door. Required number of exits, generally, you look at, there's going to be 2 to 3 exits that are going to be required on these types of buildings. If it needs a knock box, and there are some there that do, so educational facilities and those things, then we'll look at where those would be installed. Fire lanes marked, new construction containing commercial kitchens will need to have a commercial kitchen hood. And then if there's any hazards inside, that they'd have the NFPA signal for placard. So for the vast majority of what we would consider new construction for people in Medina County who have small business, this is what would apply for them. And then I provided some tables that I had to go in and build because the codes typically don't provide these things. They make you search. So I built a table on the occupancy code so you can see those. I built a table on sprinkler systems because I know that's a concern. And you can actually see there's a lot of types of buildings that don't require sprinkler systems. And then one of the things that we included in here, because I know it's a concern, is fire hydrants, water tanks, or fire hydrants and water tanks. So one of our issues that we have is that we have a lot of rural, isolated areas. There are sections of the code and NFPA that have some options, but they would still limit us. And I'll tell you, this was a big problem for us with Scooter and I, with Yancey Water, the Yancey Water project. Scooter and I fought their engineers for over a month and a half, almost 2 months, because their engineers were going to hold us to the NFPA code because that's the state statute right now. You see, we do fall under fire codes right now. We fall under fire codes that are much more restrictive than what we're proposing here with the 21 IFC. We fall under the state's 2021 NFPA 1, NFPA 101. So for example, for Yancey Water, what they were going to do, Yancey Water is building, and they're nearing completion, a 4,000 square foot office building. It's just an office building. Their engineers, under the NFPA state code, are going to require them to have a fire hydrant. To make that happen, they would have to install large water mains, the pumps to be able to pressurize that fire hydrant to the appropriate PSI that they would need, and all the other infrastructure to make it happen, and that would be the only fire hydrant in Yancey, Texas. What I did, and I advised the judge when I was doing it, but I'll just tell you, I put my neck on the line a little bit for them, because that's ridiculous, in my opinion, to force them to have to spend what would probably have been over $100,000 for a 4,000 square foot building. So what I did is I cited the code, the NFPA code, and I offered them a variance based upon the fact that the interior walls are 1 hour firewalls, and they are, which is normal construction, and that they're in close proximity to a fire department fill point because they don't have fire hydrants there, they have a fill point. So I authorized in that, and even after providing that, you can ask Scooter, because he and I met a couple of nights after that when the judge and Commissioner Sitter and I were at the community meeting at the church. Scooter told me, he said, even after I provided him the variance letter approving it as the authority having jurisdiction for this county, the engineers were still going to fight him. Our codes can protect people from that. One of the things we know is going to come out, and this is all stemming out of what's happening in Kerrville. We've seen all the legislation that's rolling and everything else. We heard it very publicly. Buildings there were built in areas they should not have been built, and they've already started to question whether or not those buildings were built to code. We're going to be held responsible for how buildings are built in this county. We either have to build into the state code, or we have to have our own codes that we can justify that we are building buildings to keep our citizens and the public safe. I had another big problem with Medina Valley ISD. They have a new safety director, by the way, Steve Connor. One of his first interactions was up. I received reports from a private third-party inspector that the state had sent there to inspect their buildings. And they wrote up 17 buildings of the Medina Valley ISD school system. And after looking at the write-ups, I got in contact with Steve and I told him, look, my personal opinion is I think that since the state had them go in and do this, that they're probably looking to make money off of this. And I asked him, I said, we haven't adopted our codes yet, but if you will allow us, if you will invite us in on a consultation, we will come in voluntarily to do a reinspection. Commissioner and Judge, out of all of the write-ups that they had, there was only one that was valid. And these requirements that this company was going to put on them, Steve Connor said that the bill that they handed him is over $17,000, would have required demolition inside their buildings, construction during the school year. To me, that's ludicrous. And I know that's a pretty powerful statement, but to me, that's ludicrous. After going in and re-inspecting those buildings, I provided a letter to Medina Valley ISD stipulating in there exactly the things we found. There were some little minor things, and I told them, I said, why don't we work out what I call a corrective action plan? There's nothing in there that needs to be done right now and to disrupt the education of our students. So why don't we do this? Why don't we have in our agreement is that next summer break, we will address those issues that are very minor issues and take care of them. This is the other thing we're going to have. Since we do fall under state codes, when third-party inspectors come in, they are going to hold any facility to the state code. And the NFPA does not provide the leeway that we do. And the final thing that we did in our proposed codes, and this was, actually I got to give some of the credit to Maggie, because when we started looking at the appeals board, some jurisdictions will appoint a board to serve as the appeals. We chose to make you the Board of Appeals. If there are any who disagree and can show that our codes would be something that is far overreaching, you're going to be the body to make that determination. So we've tried our best to put things together here that are reasonable, that make sense, things that we can stand on, things that we can say, yes, this verily will protect our citizens, protect those who visit this county, and to protect the county itself from liability. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions, but like I say, we try to address all the big items so that we know up front before we look at it.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks for putting on, I know y'all been working on it a long time. I appreciate you all doing it. It's another one of those steps in a fast-growing county of, again, commercial-wise. I know I've said this before, but I feel like we're kind of out in the front of the commercial piece of this, and, making sure that we meet code. And I would definitely rather dictate what we're doing than the state of Texas dictating what we're doing.
So right now, we're covered under state code, correct?
Yes, sir.
So you can make variances.
No, sir.
No.
I really stuck my neck out for Yancy, and I explained that when I messaged the judge and I sent him an email on that. But I did it with the understanding that I believe, and I will stand corrected if any of you would take exception with what I did. I believe that my decision is something that I can stand on and say that this is the right way to do it. It's not to force Yancey Water to have to put in an over $100,000 water system for a single fire hydrant for a 4,000 square foot office building. I think that I'm right. I would have to answer to that if it was ever called into question, standing outside of our codes. But you know what? If I need to, I will.
No, I agree with your decision that needs to be done. I totally support that. I'm just asking, you can make variances if you.
That's why we need our set of codes.
Yeah,
That's what we're making, this is
Right.
our codes.
It really asks me to put my livelihood, my credentials, and everything on the line. But in this case,
Don't strong me enough.
yes, sir.
Your boss was gonna call the entity for 4,000 worth of building, 100,000?
Well, if you consider they would have to put in water mains that are large enough,
Yeah.
they would have to put in pumps, so they're gonna have to put in some kind of tanks as well you just do the numbers on it. You're gonna have to dig up the roadway, you're gonna have to dig up this, you're gonna have to put in all the pipeline to go to it. $100,000, I think, is a low ball on that.
Well, after that said, then you have the permit inspection fees, that's every year?
So annually, and we have that in what we have,
No.
an annual inspection.
He says it's once a year.
Annual inspection, okay, first year out, and I put this in the letter that I had at the very front. What I'm proposing, what I'm asking the Commissioner's Court to allow us to do, first year out, we do an inspection off and provide a certificate of occupancy for $0. Zero to all pre-existing businesses that we have right now. Make it a point where we start building a relationship with these people. And we explain to them, every year after that, we will have to do an inspection, which is what's required. But it's $75.
That's when you're doing inspection. No, that's when
Yes,
you're
sir.
doing new construction.
New construction is very different.
That's permitting new construction.
Yeah.
That's not the annual fee. That's upfront if you're building something.
Right, an annual fee is, well, and
I'll tell you what I got, period.
so you're looking at $75 for an existing business to be re-inspected after year one. $75.
And then it's re-inspected every year.
For
Right.
$75.
Even under the state code right now, there is a requirement that they have to have annual inspections. The fact that we aren't doing it does not relieve us of the liability of having.
My insurance does mine. My insurance.
That would not be accepted under the state codes as meeting the requirements. Because what they require is an inspection by a fire inspector, a certified Texas fire inspector. And so, even if you look at our proposed fees, we worked with the judge on this way back when, for new construction, our proposed fees, in most cases, are 60% of any of the jurisdictions around us, and in some cases, less.
Yeah, we went to slide, we did all the Bear County stuff and sliced all the.
And even Guadalupe County is way above what we proposed.
Mark, since the state has the rules out there now, are those not a minimum requirement? I mean, typically when the state does something like that, you're allowed to go beyond.
Yes,
what they do.
you can, but their requirements are much more than what we have proposed.
So that's what I'm saying, how are we able to go less than what?
Because we're adopting codes. If you don't adopt codes,
Okay,
you fall under the state codes.
okay.
Most jurisdictions, and in fact, I provided y'all a letter the other day that showed every city in Medina County has adopted the International Fire Code. We're not asking for anything that the cities haven't already done.
Okay, and I agree, and I appreciate the work you've done on this. My next question is, are the fees, permitting fees that we're charging, are those necessary to fund this department? Or are they just an arbitrary amount that we think we can get a little money on the side?
Well, they're not arbitrary. I mean, those were based off of us looking at others and evaluating what others were charging and trying to be less than any of those. So it's something for us, right? Because, I mean, when you get into big projects, you know, to give you an example, I mean, we're gonna go to the biggest project, the time it takes and the resource for us to be involved in all of those inspections is a lot. I mean,
So it's-
certainly one
So
of
that
them
money,
for free.
so that money's going to fund.
It comes back, it can come back, fund vehicles, it can fund those kind of things inside the department, it certainly can.
According to the tax record, there's 900, a little over 950 commercial buildings in Medina County. Are you and Bill going to be able to do annual inspections? That's.
Sure, so on a
to me,
pre-existing
that's-
building,
You're gonna have to add other people, is this gonna create this big monster?
well, initially, on a pre-existing building right now, I can do the inspection in about 30, 45 minutes.
If you had to average 4 days every day, 5-day work.
That's, I mean, in a half hour to an hour a day, yeah, I could probably hit 4 or 5 before lunch if they're close. And that's the other thing too, is what you do is when you start doing this, you map it out.
Sure.
And you set a rotation so that you're not trying to kill yourself.
I'm gonna say, that's 990 annual inspections.
Sure.
It's a lot.
It is.
That's what we're going
And
to do.
then you're trying to do your other stuff on top of it.
But that's why we hired another person because of this.
So two people can
Yeah, they ain't gonna- they ain't
all the
gonna do it.
inspections and everything else they
Yeah,
do.
they ain't gonna do it.
Okay?
I think that-
We believe that we can do that as we initially get started. Now, as this county grows, yes, there's probably gonna be a need later on to add to that. But by that time, we will have a buildup in our fire fund code that we can actually dip into to offset all that. Most jurisdictions, what they do is they pay the salaries, they pay uniforms, they pay vehicles, they pay everything they need for those types of people right out of their fire code. So what you end up doing is, so like on how y'all have the 381 agreements and other things like that, and you have the people who are coming in to help fund some of the projects, roads and other things like that, what it does is these same people who have done that, and they're already going to be spending this money. To give you an example on that, so I said $75 for an inspection. We were with Natalia's new city administrator. They have a new city administrator. We met with her and Tommy Ortiz, their mayor, a week ago. They have one facility that they want to have an inspection done on inside of their city. Their third party charges $500 for what we're asking to charge $75. So third party inspectors are going to be way up there on their feet.
So I think strictly from a liability standpoint, we need to adopt something. So in essence, we've adopted the state code if we don't do our own.
Right.
So if we can improve on the state code and make it less regulatory, which is what I'm after, from a contractor or builder's perspective that's trying to build something and gets hit up with permitting fees from the city, from now the fire code, which is something we've never had in this county before. It's a headache coming from that perspective. But my thought is that we need to have it, or we're gonna have the county liable for what we haven't done, what we've already built, if there's a problem with it. If we're not inspecting this on the state standards, and we need to inspect to some standards, and if we can write some that are less intrusive than the states, then I'm for that.
So that's what Mark has done, based off of all the input. That's what we've tried to do, is to make it the least intrusive that we possibly can. I mean, at the end of the day, this isn't any different than, we don't need subdivision rules and regulations either. Just let them take their stuff and do it. I mean, it's about looking at the things and hopefully providing some kind of guidance in the process. And currently, we don't have that.
Because like I said, I don't know why they would even call for a foundation permit. Oh, what, they're gonna do slabs also, evidently. Solid formation.
That's general across the board.
You know, just how many people you gonna hire first? You ain't gonna hire enough people get on with it. You ain't gonna do it with 2 or 3, 4.
Well,
You don't have a standard ordinance in through the county and commercial.
jurisdictions across the region that are even
It's just-
more than us only have 3 or 4 people. Guadalupe County has 3. It's in their entire county. Guadalupe County. Atascosa County had 2. Now they're down to 1. Bandera County has 1 person. So, I mean, and Frio County doesn't even have anybody. So everybody in Frio County has to have a third-party inspection. And third-party inspectors are gonna look at the exact same things that we do, but they're gonna charge astronomical fees compared to what we're looking at. I'd say the difference between an annual inspection of $500 for a third party and $75 for us.
They're not getting charged, the people with the buildings now, they're not getting charged.
Well, and see, here's the thing about it. If you have something happen, this is like playing Russian roulette. If you don't have a code and you have a problem, something happens, like look what happened in Kerrville.
Yeah.
Okay, those people now are going to be held to the standards that they should have done everything by. And I don't have a crystal ball, but I think you're going to see a big changeover in elected officials. I firmly believe, and I know the guy who's the emergency manager there. He's going to be given his walking paper here before long, and there will be others. The lawsuits, you know how that works. The attorneys are going to wait until about 20 months in, because around 24 months is normally when the statute of limitations start running out, and about 20 months from now, we're going to see lawsuits come out by the dozens against the city, the county, the builders. The reason right now I have the problem with the engineers, with the NC Water, the engineers and architects have to sign off on those plans. When they put their John Hancock on that, they are going to be liable as well. And so if we don't give them an alternative for what we think it should be, those engineers and architects are going to have to hold to the state code.
I'm okay with adopting the plan, and I appreciate the fact that y'all have slashed the fees in comparison to what's surrounding us. I would like to see you slash that. If it's not supporting, if it's not funding the department, and I'm not in the commercial construction business, but having done enough construction to know that here's another fee, another money-making thing that you're having to pay every year. I just want that to be as low as possible. If you think $75 is as low as it possibly can be, then that's where we are. But if that's not funding the actual department, it's just another income source, I would say make that as low as possible.
I mean, $75 for just, I'm gonna say 100 commercial buildings, or not 100, 1,000 commercial buildings, because you said what, 990? Okay, say 1,000. $75 a year is $75,000 a year. You're not gonna fund one position with
In a vehicle.
vehicle, insurance, and salary for $75,000 a year. Okay?
And, you know, one thing too, sort something out, go dig in. Let's kick off and dig in this whole implementation and see how many people left in business. You're gonna put everybody out of business. Okay. This sort of business, let's just go to the country market and let's just shut down town. Okay, so country market,
Country Mart will only have a $75 fee.
They'll pay their $75, but they'll write.
no, and then they got to comply.
This is something, well,
They got to comply with the law.
Well, but the compliance is easy. Compliance is easy on a pre-existing building.
Well,
You're going to walk out the door with 36 inches of clear space.
Yeah.
36 inches of clear space. So the width of the door has to be clear. It means you don't put things in front of it. So we go over and we inspect them, and if you find something, that's why we included the policy in here. If we find violations, most minor violations you can fix right on the spot. If you walk up and they've got a little box sitting in front of a door, that's when you say, hey, can we move this box because this would be a violation?
And then if we do, you make sure you make a note on it, because that shows that they are going more to try and work with us. You don't write them up like that third-party inspector did with Medina County ISD. You work with folks and you build a relationship out of this. So that when you drive up in the parking lot, you're not the one that everybody looks at and goes, oh, heck, can we put the close sign up? We want to be the guys that when they see us, they're like, okay, they work with us.
We have to adopt a code though, that's for everybody. It may not be you that's going, it may be someone else that may write it.
But that's why we put the policy in there as well.
That's right. That's why we have to make sure the policy is right to do it.
Right.
I
Building don't have marks or present now. So
If they don't, they're not required. They don't have to come into code. That's why the pre-existing building part is right there in the very front of it. If they don't have a fire sprinkler system now, they will not be required to have a fire sprinkler system.
Until when?
Unless they modify their building more than 50% of the overall structure or 30% of a load-bearing wall. Now, I had private discussions with Commissioner Castiglione, and I want to point out a building I know that every single person sitting right here has been into. That's the Joe and Harry Freeman Coliseum. You know when it was built? The early 1950s. You walk into it right now, you will not find a single fire sprinkler. Not one. Anywhere. Because that clause, the 50% clause, is how we normally refer to that. So the way to get by, even if you're going to do a major remodel on your building, phase it. No one single phase is more than 50%. That's what they do in Fair County. Or in the case of the county building, the building right behind my office for the sheriff's office, you partition it. That's how the county ended up not having to spend all the extra money to put fire sprinklers in that building. They partitioned it inside.
So when the policy says that it has to be built, it has to pass the inspection from the era when it was built?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So there's a lot of buildings that have been built recently.
Sure.
Here that don't have sprinkler systems.
They don't need it then.
Even though it was required.
Here's what you have to do as a fire inspector, and so the only thing that any certified fire inspector can do in the state of Texas, in any building, when you walk up to it, if it's already been here, then the assumption is, and I know assumptions are bad, but in this case you have to assume the architect and the engineer signed off on those plans when that building was built. All I can do is go in and inspect them on life safety. I want to make sure we've got free clearance to go in and out of the building. I want to see some fire smoke detectors. But in the case of the pre-existing buildings, they can have a battery smoke detector. I can buy those right now at Walmart for $15 a piece. They need to have a 5-pound fire extinguisher. I bought 2 of them for my office so we could have one in each building, or in each truck. Cost me $45 for 2. I got a deal on it. Nothing that we're asking on pre-existing buildings is going to cause people to have to renovate, make major upgrades, or anything. If they exist today, then they go off the pre-existing.
Just as clarification too, I understand $75,000 is not going to fund the department, but if it's not necessary for the department to operate, that's what I'm getting at. If we're not counting on that $75,000 to allow this department to operate, then I'm for not charging the $75,000.
Are you talking about just for the annual
Permit
inspections?
fees, the annual fee, $75 annual.
$75, or I'm looking at this chart here also for Medina County Fire Marshal's office, and it's got, depending on the expense of the building, you got $350 permit fees, plan review for $300, permit inspection fee $10 for each $1,000. So there's a lot of cost in this page.
If we don't have codes that we're collecting those fees on, the state is gonna send in inspectors like they did here, or the third party, which I already explained to you, the third party inspectors right now, our fees are much less than those. In some cases, those are gonna be 40% less of what a third party inspector is gonna charge.
I appreciate that. I'd like them to be less than they are.
Yes, sir.
That's just me.
And those are private businesses. They make their living off of doing this stuff. And they love it when they can find a county that doesn't have their own codes, because they know they can hold everybody to the state codes, and that's when they come in heavy-handed. Privately, I wouldn't want to say it in court, but privately, I'd be willing to tell you exactly which company that was, and I wouldn't want them anywhere near any building that we have.
Okay, what if it's a commercial private building where they'll have no outside access to it? Employees only?
It's not open to the public.
No,
It doesn't fall under the codes. Commercial building fire codes apply to buildings that have public access.
now, when you say public access, that's implying like.
Anybody from the private can come in to conduct business.
Is that, start including, ADA bathrooms and everything else? Okay, how about a garage? Take a car to a garage.
Okay, they fall under the code, but their requirements are much less, and it's listed in here in the tables on what they're held to. But if you had, let's say that on your property you have a private barn that only you and your employees have access to, that doesn't fall under this, because there's no public access.
Okay.
But if people can come in to do business, those kinds of things, then it does. And that's why the codes exist, is protect the public and to protect those who might come in to do business.
So I'm taking all the way back to kind of the whole thing here. I mean, at every turn, we listened, Mark went back, worked on this to make sure that we weren't trying to penalize any existing businesses. What we're really trying to do is get a line in the sand here moving forward, is we're really getting into all the major construction and these big projects. I mean, you're going to have HEBs and who knows, Amazon facilities and all those.
Yeah, I'm more about small mom.
That's what we're trying to do. Well, and that's why we went back and tried to, and I think the important thing in this whole code, first of all, I don't look at this code any different than I look at subdivision rules and regulations. It's a living document. If we get into it and we don't like something, all we gotta do is bring it back and change it. Mark brought up a while ago, if there's an appeal, somebody wants an exception, they bring it here. If they don't think, if we think it's over, we have the right to that exception as court does. And, I think, we have literally tried to go back and get something way less stringent than what state code says it is right now. And to be able to have the authority to go out and make sure that these things are being done. When it comes to fees, I'm not sure we can do whatever we would really want on the fees. We did try to be super conservative, when we worked with these big projects, knowing we had fire code coming, all of them knew we didn't have any right now, which is like, what do we follow? And they're looking for what they need to follow. And, my words to them were, whatever normal industry fire code is, which believe me, these projects know what percentage of a project to figure for these permits and stuff. They know the answer. Just figure your normal thing, and I will tell you Medina County is going to be less than what that number is. And that's what we literally tried to do, and that was from the early onset of you all in the discussions we had, was to try to get it down. Yes, when you get into really big projects, it gets to be a really big number. It could be the potential on really, really big projects, but there's a lot of effort that goes into that on behalf of the county, to do it. And so, being compensated in some way for that. You know, the $75 annual fee, I don't really think, to me, that's not as big a deal as the payment of a new project and working through that process. You know,
Keith,
going
there's
back
someone's
years-
been in business 30 years, they've had business 30 years, they've never paid for annual inspection. You go in there and tell them to start paying now. They're not gonna call Mark, they're gonna call you, they're
Right,
gonna call.
and that's what I'm saying, it is a $75 one, but, you know, the new construction fee is kind of like, I mean, we're gonna have a lot to go into the efforts on this side. So, I mean, I agree, $1,075,000, is it gonna pay for a department? No. And the intention of this wasn't to pay for the department, but I think that, but it is effort on our behalf. Forget the department, it's the county group. You know, it's our resources that we're putting out there to.
It's just another layer of government bureaucracy, and the reason we're getting a lot of this construction company coming to Medina County right now, they're running from that. I've talked to some people in Medina County, it's a nightmare. Did you ever call that phone right? It's a nightmare. I think Bush was gonna call you, talk to that, he said, Larry, he said, I'll get rid of everything in Burke County. He said, it has been a total nightmare dealing with these people, not you, but with this market.
I understand.
I don't know if you talked to him or not yet.
That's why I was saying,
I take his word for it. He owns businesses, and I love it.
but even when they come out here, and they build a building, they are going to have to build to a code. Right now, they have to build to state code, and we have to require that third-party inspectors come in that are going to charge them at least double of what we're talking about. At least double. They're not going to come out here and avoid being under code. You can't go anywhere in the state of Texas and not be under code.
Back next year, 4 or 5 people, I guarantee it. Guarantee it. I can see it right on the wall. Because you're not gonna get 2 or 3 people to handle 1,000 different entities. Ain't gonna happen.
I think there definitely needs to be codes. I'm a firm believer in that. Certainly needs to be code. There's just a few things about it. You address most of them with the farm stuff and chemical. I saw your chart. I mean, I've been through this thing you gave me, this paper. I've been through it front and back 10 times probably. I have hours and hours and hours of reading it, going back, looking at the law and different stuff. And some of the stuff is maybe a little bit easier than the state code, but a lot of it is not. Some of it is actually a step up above state code, the way I interpret state code. So there's just a few issues I have with it. I'm not against the codes. I do think it's for our best interest to have them, but like we did on the subdivision stuff, I think we should my opinion, take a little bit of time and address all the problems. Like, I thought we were just doing commercial code, and it's got the fire in here on, so this is going back to private property.
Well,
Section 307.
the burning you're talking about?
The burning.
So that was in discussion with Maggie. So rather than creating a separate set of rules for Medina County to be adopted by the county, as she said, most jurisdictions put that in their fire code. Because that where it would make the most sense.
Yeah.
It's either that or you adopt the state administrative code as a separate line for the county. The problem we have right now on burning, it's not the people who make a little oops mistake.
Right.
The problem we have is that we have a few repetitive that even the sheriff's office right now, there's nothing they can do. And in what we've proposed, I actually wrote in there, Medina County Sheriff's Office would have the authorization as well to uphold the burning laws. Because got to give them something to be able to do something with some of these folks. Some of these places we have been to 8, 10, 12 times in the past year, and they all look at you and just smile because they know. The minute you walk away, nothing you can do.
So I'm here, Commissioner Lynch, say he'd like us to take another look at this.
Well, I'm rethinking the whole new construction part of it. That's the chart I was looking at. I wasn't thinking new construction. Yeah, I just don't want to be regulatory just to be regulatory, just because we can. Let's impose a permit fee or some kind of a fee just because we can. Let's just get a little bit more. This is supposed to be about the safety of the people building the building, the safety of the people who are going to use the building. But oh, by the way, you've got to pay us also. It's all about your safety. We're overseeing that, but we want to check every year from you.
Well, we do the same with that in subdivisions.
We do. We do.
I mean, this is the same.
We do.
concept.
And this is just another one.
Right, it's, so it's what we think the value is from us as the county, like, what, should we, because this is really about the county, not that, forget the department, but it's the county. He's not getting any of the money, it's us, it's the county. So the question is, do we feel like we should have should we be getting something for having to do that work? Or, well, we'll just do it and we don't charge you anything to do any of it. And some of it, when you start getting later, those projects are going to be big.
I don't worry about the big businesses like all the.
No,
I have no problem with that stuff. It's the little small businesses where it'll affect.
And that's why I provided that one pager that has the requirements for those small businesses. It's those 15 items.
Yeah, that's part of the issue is the fact that you pointed out they've been in business for 30 years, and now somebody's going to show up. Mark's going to show up at the door, going, "Hey, I'm here for your fire inspection."
If that's an issue, then why don't we just say that there's no reinspection fee? I don't particularly have a dog in that hunt.
Yeah.
But the problem is going to be is that over time, as we get more and more and more businesses, the amount of time, $75, what if that's supposed to offset is 1 hour of time, vehicle travel, vehicle wear, and the electronics, because I still haven't paid the fee on it yet, but we owe $3,000 for the inspection software that we're going to be using. So once we have adopted codes, I have to pay that. So what that means is we have expenses going out of the county to take care of all this.
Right, that's all.
All we're trying to do is recoup.
I get it.
But I'd say the $75 for re-inspections maybe is not, that's not a big deal. I mean, that's a pretty consistent number.
The mom and pop guy, or owner of the Country Mart, to Larry's example, is sitting there going, "We're safe. We've been operating this thing here for 100 years, never paid anybody for anything, and now all of a sudden somebody's saying, I've got to be inspected." Yeah, maybe it's an easy inspection. I'm going to meet all the requirements. And the wonderful service you're offering me of inspecting my business to make sure it's safe, I get to pay you $75. Well, that's not a ton of money. However, I haven't had to do that for 100 years, and now all of a sudden I have to do it. And I got to do it every year. So if this has been, once it's in place, I can see people going, "Oh, it's my annual inspection." But the fact that we're starting this for nothing, there's going to be, there's going to be.
If you're going to do annual inspection, make it effective.
I was going to say,
the day we adopt this, anything built after this day.
Well, you'll do annual inspection, you do an annual inspection, but the charge of an annual inspection would be on new construction going forward.
But that's not, that's.
That's what I'm listening to. Yeah. That's what I'm listening to. Right.
So other businesses could be grandfathered in.
Well, they would still do an inspection, they would inspect, but they're not going to charge annual inspection.
Right now, and this is the part that I was trying to
Going
clarify.
forward, hey, you're building a brand new building, so it will be $75 a year.
Yeah.
The way the state fire marshal's office would look at it is if we have a building that we have some kind of injury or something that would rise to the level of the state involvement, if they come in, these places don't have a certificate of occupancy, they've not been inspected, they classify that as what's called a deficiency. What a deficiency would then do It was labeled as that person is gonna have greater liability. The jurisdiction, the state is gonna be able to come back on, they're gonna be able to come to me, they're gonna say, Mark, you know the law. You know what you're required to do. Why didn't you do it?
Yeah.
And there's not any recourse to the civil action on that. I have nothing to stand, I have no safety net right now. None.
I think we're in agreement that you do the inspection. I think what we're talking about now is what that fee is gonna look like. And maybe those that are existing would not get the fee, but any new business moving forward would understand that part of the process of building this business
And
is
that's-
an annual inspection fee.
that's perfect.
Or if they went in and they triggered the 50% rule, for example, and you did a total revamp of it, now you have to bring everything to
sure.
code.
I'm okay with
At that point, they would be.
And the way I wrote my letter that goes with it, the summary, was that I was asking the court. So if the decision of the court is every building that exists now, we will do an inspection on. We will provide a C of O on, but we will only charge the annual fee for buildings that are built from this point forward.
I think that's.
Or if they do a major.
They have to, if they do something where they have to come up to the current.
Yeah, if they did that 50% rule, then it would trigger that also.
Well, Mark, didn't you say also that you were gonna do the first year for
I
nothing to kind
yeah, I have it in
of
writing
integrate
here.
it in?
I have it in writing here that I provided to the court the first year out anyway.
But this would have been.
I didn't want
The
to.
first year out is free,
Yeah.
okay? But right now, we've been arguing for approximately 20 minutes on your annual registration for your vehicle. Okay? We're arguing over $75, okay? $75 is not gonna include the full-time position that it will take to inspect those 1,000 existing commercial businesses.
You know, if I'd never paid an annual inspection fee on my vehicle,
Exactly.
all of a sudden you walked in and said, hey, guess
Yeah,
what? Now you
exactly.
get to pay $75.
Can I get in on it?
Mark is right on the point that these existing buildings, they've been around for 20, 30, 40 years. What if something does happen, where we haven't looked out for the public that are using those buildings?
I think we do it. We do the inspection. I think everybody is on board for doing the inspection.
All I'm saying is, if you go to course and it catches on fire, all I say is run like hell.
Lots of options, lots of things.
Run like hell. I've told the same thing about people, my building, my county building, I've told the same thing, don't want to put out nothing, I said, run.
I keep waiting for the floor to fall through.
Don't run nothing.
Every time I walk through, I keep waiting for the floor to
Oh,
fall
do
through.
that, yeah, and make sure you step on the license plate. My mother actually went to school in that building.
Oh, goodness.
It used to be about 5 miles up the road, 3 miles up the road.
Am I allowed to ask a question?
You might as well, we've been here, it's after.
You're gonna put it in the new way, really,
Every time orders.
It's not even hungry anymore.
For the first time in my life, I have ADT in my house. And it includes, things to detect fire, things to detect gas, and things like that that are not that expensive. If those places fall short in some areas, some of those things that you were talking about can be purchased. My son puts ADT systems in, and these things are not that expensive. I mean, so if a business falls short and you inspect, you know, if you're not charging them $75, surely they can go to Walmart and buy some of those things can be purchased at Walmart or at Amazon or wherever, and they're not expensive, but they work. Just like the fire, you know, the detectors, the smoke detectors.
Well, all I can tell you, Linda, on that, my insurance company alone run me through the rigors of getting all that stuff. I had it all. It was document after document after document. Went to one of them, and the fire extinguisher was like 5 feet too far away from the door. Well, that's a bad deal. You know, and it was months I fought with them, and then had to write a check for $17,000 on top of it. So the insurance company is gonna cover most of this stuff. They covered me completely. I mean, they went through checking grounds, fault, wires and everything else.
So you're gonna, so when you have, you're exactly right, you got both extremes
Yeah.
there. This is why we need this, because you have you that has that insurance company.
Yeah.
We'll go right back to some of the small ones that don't even have an insurance company.
That's
Or
right.
haven't had anything inspected, which comes back to Commissioner Castiglione's point about somebody should be looking at this. Because if something happens, somebody should have looked. And, it'll be.
We don't have roadhouse, same thing.
Well, I guess part of my question too, even though I brought my house up, is that if they have a security system, even if they're an existing business that's been there a while, sometimes they may have some safeguards through their security system that will,
Well, in this
qualify.
case, we're actually talking about commercial. This is,
Yeah,
this is
and that's
commercial,
why I said that.
non-residential.
But if they're commercial businesses,
Right.
even if they're an old building, they may have
Right. Oh, yes.
some form of security.
Yeah, they have all kinds of technology. And this is just somebody going and looking and saying, do they have it? Is it clear? Is the space clear? Is it the items that's on that list? Are we meeting the basics of life safety in the best interest of the public? That's what the inspection is
It would
for.
only take them one lawsuit if somebody got hurt in their business to get the message across. You were not protecting the people coming into their business.
Okay, so I'm going to bring us back again.
I think the 1 year thing is huge, that you can go to, as also a business owner, you can go to those and explain it and do the first one and repeat to them that this is on us now to get you up to where we're adopting a code. Get the explanation out there, and then we will see you again in a year, and there will be a fee, whatever. There should be something for the expenses that go to it. You are gonna drive to it, you're gonna, his time, yes, he's,
Well, I think the $75 for your own agreement, but we just won't do that. Again, the thing is, you can add $75 inspection fee a year down the road, 2 years down the road, right? I mean, this is a living document. Commissioner, you still have another point I know.
Well, he just kind of makes my point.
What was it?
So you have
I mixed
existing,
your
you have existing buildings, right, mom and pop, so when do we implement the fee? When they change ownership, or what? Is it just?
Well, I think if it's just basic, at least what I heard her say is the line in the sand would be, it's either new construction, or we won't change that unless because it needs to be simple.
So do we still need
But-
are they still those existing buildings still gonna get inspected?
Yes, because they need to know the life safety. I mean, we still need to do that, just not gonna charge them to go there and say, hey, you need to take all the boxes from in front of that door where people can't get out the back in an emergency. I mean, that's what, hey, you have no fire extinguishers, you do need to install some fire extinguishers here. So it's the basic life safety part of it, and we would want to inspect them, we just, what I'm hearing is we would charge them to do that.
So I look at it almost as like a service. So I recently got TxDOT to come up and meet me at a place north of Hondo to look about driveway permits on a piece of land we were selling. Had a good conversation with the guy, got everything kind of ironed out of my head. He didn't say, oh, and here's your bill for $75 for this service. I had to drive all the way out here, spend an hour and a half talking about it.
We had to talk about that, though,
Here's your bill for $75.
yeah, we had to talk
Well, I
about
wouldn't have
that.
even called it. I would just done what I wanted to do. Probably, unless I knew there was really harsh consequences.
Yeah, but that had to come up.
So that's kind of how I'm looking at it. I could be talked out of it, maybe.
This to me was, like, to keep it as most simple as form, the re-inspection fee would apply to anything you're going forward on a new construction, okay? It would apply if somebody had an old building, regardless of how old they hit that 50% trigger, they up the code. So that major remodel then would trigger that every year. Am I missing one? No, I think that's.
I think
That's
the
it.
question was
It just stays.
if they change ownership, I think was one of the questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
change in ownership was one thing.
Yeah, and you could do that one, you could add that, because that's easy to track, because they'll know that every year.
Yes.
Did the ownership change, and if it did, then you could apply it. Maggie?
I think if we're gonna change that extensively though, I'd like to
be
Oh,
able to
definitely.
research some of that in terms of just.
Yeah, no,
There's
we're
not
not,
to be
I'm not,
disparate treatment and fees or anything like that. I
Yes.
think that needs to be.
yes, well, I'm not, I mean, we're gonna table it, we'll bring it back. I'm trying though to get a good definitive, here's the issue, so we can go back and fix those. So we can bring it back. So that's why I just wanna make sure we're clear, but I think those three criteria on that would eliminate that piece of it. I still,
I don't have a problem with codes. I don't like fire.
go what?
I don't like fire on private property in there, on the commercial codes, and I know maybe recommend.
We have to put it somewhere. Where would you like us to put it?
Well, you still have to do some kind of code for, are you not gonna have any kind of residential stuff? 'Cause-
No.
No.
No?
So residential falls on you
Right.
Yes.
under the subdivision rules. The only way that we get involved is on multifamily.
Okay.
So,
I'd
yeah.
like more time to look into the fire code. I have no problem with code. The fee, I don't, I'm iffy on, if you want to do the 1 year free, or I like not charging.
Well, this was, what we're saying is none.
Right.
New construction, yes.
Yeah.
New
If they
structure,
could, if they could
I'm just
start
trying to take the
50%,
wrong cost.
yes, and not to do that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we can incorporate that.
And by the way, on
And
the
then
burning,
go back
there's
and
no
look
fee
at
for
the
that.
main
Sure, I
chart.
know.
And then go back and look at the permitting fee.
Yeah, if y'all would look at that and we're less than what the standard is, then I don't know how to argue with that.
Well, we'll look at it, we'll still look at it, and we'll bring back the surrounding, like, we'll bring you something.
Yeah.
I mean, that's no
New
problem.
construction, I have no issues at all, none, zero.
you know, then you get into fuel tanks. Underground, above ground, I got both. They're gonna have to be inspected
For new construction.
for new construction.
Yes, sir, for new construction. And that's required by the state anyway. If you're gonna put in an underground fuel right now, they're gonna make you do an environmental impact study,
And then again, when you take it up.
all
Yeah, well,
the.
TCEQ you get through with you pay a lot of fees.
Oh, yes, sir. If you're gonna put one in.
We're doing one right now, just the TCEQ permit's $25,000.
Yes, sir.
That before you call him up, to show him what we're doing.
Well, then, these are really cheap fees.
This on top of it. It's just more, I hate to do it.
And that's why it's just something new. And we're gonna hear
I understand, commissioners, and like I said, at the end of the day, right now, and this is what makes me nervous, I don't have a safety net. I have none. I already told you I put my neck on the line already, a couple of times. But that could cause me to have to go to court someday. And I've just accepted that. That's what you call risk management. I've accepted that as a risk I needed to take. I felt very strongly about it.
All right, let's get back here.
So I recommend tabling this.
Yes, I'm
with
just taking on that.
With, you know, bringing it back, getting the existing buildings clarified and addressed, along with the private, residential burning addressed. But I do believe Mr. Chadwick is right in regards to, we really need to get something adopted.
I agree.
That everybody knows, every commercial business in here knows the requirements that Medina County is asking.
Well, I appreciate it. Well, like I said, I feel we'll just, I mean, unless the court wants to take action, we'll just take no action. We'll go back and we'll work on this. Thank you.
Based on all the discussion, I would recommend maybe workshopping it once, just because we're gonna have to settle on what we're gonna do in different areas before we can finally draft it and then circulate that for a vote on adoption or not.
The other thing is, I know that you know this, is we are nearing our end of our agreement time that we said that we would have a code in place.
Yeah, we'll get on. Okay.
I think that's the end of October is when we have agreed that we would have our codes in place.
1 year, easy.
We're getting massaged. All right, so no action today on it. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Okay, number 18, discuss and take possible action to approve a Thomas Rivers agreement for West Proflex access to the courthouse annex, law library, patron access. This is upstairs, right above us. It's the little law library, and it is the software for that.
I make a motion.
And it's in the amount of $1,820.97 a month for 36 months.
Second.
For West Proflex access to the courthouse annex, law library, patron access.
I have a motion. Commissioner Lynch, second by Commissioner Castiglione to approve the Thomas Rivers agreement for West Proflex access. Any other discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item number 19, discuss and take possible actions to approve the 2026 fees to be charged for services by the Office of the Sheriffs and the Constables. You all do have a copy of that in your binder there. This is just our annual adoption, and we have to have those turned in, I think it's by the end of this month. So I keep getting emails asking us where they are.
Did any of these change?
No.
Okay.
So these are these new subpoenas or these existing subpoenas?
You can only ask those questions in the morning.
I recommend to approve the 2026 fees to be charged for services by the Office of the Sheriff and Constable.
I have a motion by Commissioner Castiglione, second by Commissioner Sitter to approve the 2026 fees to be charged for services of the Office of Sheriffs and Constables. Any other discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 20, discuss and take possible action to accept the Texas Indigent Defense Commission, TIDC, fiscal year 25 formula grant award number 212-25 or -163. This is in the total amount of $39,230. This is a grant, all counties benefit from this, and it's basically they take your population and then they take kind of a base fee out of the total money that's available for the state and calculate it, and Medina County's portion is $39,230 for this year. So that's what, and again, it goes towards the indigent defense.
It's annual, we get it every year.
I make a motion to accept the Texas Energy Defense Commission FY 25 formula grant award number 212-25-163.
Second.
I have a motion from Commissioner Lawler, a second by Commissioner Lawler, second by Commissioner Lynch. Any other discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 21. I see you are so excited.
I hate it. I'm surprised I can walk. I was a little worried when I said
If there was an award, we would give it to you.
I made it though. No, but thank you for your time.
So this is item 21, discuss and take possible action to approve the final plats of the following units of Redbird Ranch subdivision located in precinct 1 on State Highway 211. Unit 3M-4 and Unit 3M-5. You do have the copies there of them this morning. Commissioner?
I'll let you go ahead.
Yeah, of course. So I'm Catherine Tran. I'm at Pete Dawson Engineers. I'm here to talk about these plats a little bit. These are the final plats of the next two units within Redbird Ranch. It's just a continuation of the single-family homes in the area. The two units total about 270 lots. The plans and the plats have been approved by the utility companies and the district.
Got to review the plats last Thursday. Everything looks good. These are just the next two units. These are just really standard. Some of the names on the streets are getting pretty long.
They're
Like
getting
Albatross
pretty creative.
something or other, and I'm like, those are gonna get denied after like 16 characters.
Yes, no, the bird theme that's getting carried out through all
come back though, please. Come back and you can stay longer. Item number 22, discuss and take possible action to approve the updated official bonds for the following elected officials to comply with Senate Bill 387 for Keith Lee, County Judge, and Mark Cashin, County Court at Law Judge. This was a new law that was passed that requires us to have a $500,000 bond. Those bonds, we gave y'all a copy of them. They were approved. They had to be in place by September 1, and they're all dated for September 1. So I just wanted the court to be aware that we got that done.
I'll make a motion that we approve the updated official bonds for Judge Lutz and Judge Cashin.
Have a motion as stated by Commissioner Lynch, second by Commissioner Lawler. Any other discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 23, discussing take possible action to declare a 2016 Ford Explorer from the Sheriff's Office as salvage and authorize disposal.
I'll move to declare the 2016 Ford Explorer from the Sheriff's Office as salvage and authorized disposal.
Second.
Have a motion, Commissioner Lynch, to declare the 2016 Ford Explorer from the Sheriff's Office as salvage and authorize disposal, second by Commissioner Sitter. Any other discussion? The only thing I do have is I have all the records on it. I was going to read through those real quick. 2016, don't have time. We'll move on then. All in favor, aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item number 24, court member announcements. I bet these are going to be short.
Everybody's hungry, so we're making
Yeah.
it quick. Everybody's
Precinct
starting to laugh.
1 is picking up trash and on the potholes.
Precinct 3 is good.
We're real good at precinct 2.
Seal coated 2 roads, did a lot of shredding, patching, and boom shredding, and we're regrading a lot of our gravel roads.
Excellent. The only thing I have, it's not an announcement, but just to clarify, we talked last time that October 6th meeting that we needed to move. I couldn't remember, I think a couple of commissioners on that Friday the 3rd will not be here. Who told me they will not be here?
I will not be here.
You won't either? Well, then it ain't the 3rd. What about the 2nd? The Thursday?
We're leaving the 2nd.
No, we need the 6th.
The 6th.
October 6th is the deal. This is the Friday, the 2nd.
Okay, go 2nd, fun.
What about Friday the 3rd? Because I thought
I can do the second.
I can do the 2nd if it doesn't go this long.
Yeah.
I'm doing the one I agree with.
So you can do the 3rd
Either
also?
one.
Jessica,
I
can you do the 3rd?
Yeah.
Because it would be better if we did the 3rd. I just need to
Okay,
make
you're
sure.
right, while we're gone.
Yeah. There'll be at least, that way as long as we'll have a quorum, I won't get a super big agenda, but it would be better for preparations from everybody on a Friday because that means Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock you'll have to be posted to do everything. So you're good, Commissioner Sitter, you're good. So we'll go ahead and officially that October the 6th, October the 3rd will be the meeting date that Friday instead of Monday, October 6th. And then the 3 of us will